fine day with a woof and a purr, a baby was born and it caused a little stir. No blue buzzard, no three-eyed frog, just a feline canine little cat dog. Cat dog.
CatDog is an original Nicktoon that aired from 1998 to 2005 and was created by one Peter Hannon. The name pretty much hits the nail on the head with what the show is about. The show revolved around cat and dog, a conjoined twin hybrid that shared the same body. Nickelodeon went with the same trope as they had with the Angry Beavers. Two brothers that have vastly different personalities who are stuck with one another. Though the formula for the show was nothing new, the show put a perfect twist on it that left viewers wanting more. It's a show that was lighthearted and whimsical, but also had its own sense of morbid humor and a tinge of mystery to it. When I watched this show as a kid, I remember thinking to myself, where did CatDog come from? Were they made by some scientist in a lab? Do they have parents? Why didn't the show give us any context about how they got here? And do they go to the bathroom? This show left my young brain with so many questions, until the day came that we finally got some answers. Years into the series, with many stories having already been told, finally we would get answers that the show left us looking for. But would the answers we were given answer all of our questions, or would it leave us with more questions? Well, you're gonna have to find out, because today we're looking at the episode of CatDog that would finally explain everything. Kind of. Before I get into it, I'd like to add that if you want to watch the whole episode for yourself without my commentary, you can find CatDog streaming on Paramount Plus, not a sponsor. The day was November 25th, 2000, and many were excitedly waiting for the premiere of the new made-for-TV movie, CatDog and the Great Parent Mystery. It was such a momentous occasion that they even recorded a new theme song just for this particular episode.
One fine day with a question on their mind, CatDog left old Nearbush behind. Tired of wondering, tired of feeling bad, set off searching for their mom and their dad. CatDog, 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 CatDog. Out on the road went little CatDog. They're gonna find weirdos, gonna find nuts, pussycats, goofballs, hillbilly mutts. They look real high and they look real low. Look in places where the sun don't go. CatDog, CatDog.
The episode begins with CatDog flying down the street on a makeshift cart heading to Rancid Rabbit's 10th annual Parents' Day. They set up their cart outside of the event and peek through a hole in the fence to catch a glimpse of the festivities.
Look how much fun they're having, Cat. Playing leap parent, pin the child on the parent, hot potato parent. Isn't Parents' Day magical?
Then Cliff comes up with his parents to tease CatDog, saying that they can't go to Parents' Day because they don't have parents. As Dog reminisces on the days when they used to curl up on their mom's nose while their dad sang them to sleep, Cat claims that all he remembers is them being on their own since day one. Dog then explains that today is finally going to be the day that they reunite with their long-lost parents.
Attention, CatDog's parents! Hello, 10-4! Please report the CatDog! I'm announcing, paging Mom and Dad. We're not going anywhere. We'll be here till further notice. Come get us!
But Cat continues to put Dog down, saying that their parents are never coming back. Later that night, we see CatDog go home and descend into a secret room hidden in their house.
Oh, I feel a lot of love in my parents' theory room. Love! Love! Love!
As Cat continues to try to bring him down, Dog explains that he thinks their parents are trying to find them, but they're being stopped by forces that are out of their control. Dog proceeds to share examples from his hundreds of theories of situations their parents could potentially be stuck in. Cat adamantly holds true to his belief that they aren't looking for them, or so we're led to believe. Later that night, we see CatDog in bed. Dog is muttering in his sleep about his parents, while Cat, who is still awake, goes into his secret place under the bed and pulls out a pacifier that he has hidden away. On the pacifier, we see the words "Love, Mom and Dad" etched into it. We then see Cat's true feelings, that he hopes that maybe their parents are looking for them. The next day, CatDog are in their living room when a big earthquake happens. The TV then changes to a news report where Randolph, the reporter, is saying that the giant geyser Old Up'n'Chuck at Yonderland is due to erupt within the next 24 hours. Winslow then reveals that the last time Old Up'n'Chuck erupted was about the time that CatDog showed up.
Look at that! A cute dog attached to an ugly, disgusting cat!
This leads Cat to realize that they must come from Yonderland, and he tries poorly to use reverse psychology to get Dog to suggest that they go to look for their parents there. And just like that, they head off to Yonderland.
I I can hardly wait to see Mom's smiling eyes and Dad's salami green skin again.
While they're gone, the greasers show up at CatDog's house, and Winslow explains that they left for Yonderland in search of their parents. The greasers say they're gonna find CatDog so they can pound their whole family tree. And back to CatDog on the road. They decide to stop at a rest stop called Rest Area 51 so they can use the bathroom.
So that's how those rascals do it.
That's gotta hurt.
I found it riveting.
I hate public restrooms.
After they go to the bathroom, they find a group of people heading to the mothership because the aliens are returning everyone that they've ever abducted. Dog explains that all this lines up with one of his theories.
It's Theory 421! Mom and Dad were abducted by aliens and forced to build lunar igloos out of bars of intergalactic soap!
Surprisingly, the aliens do show up, carving a mountain into a toilet for their spaceship to land on, but of all the abductees that are dropped off, none of them are CatDog's parents. Dog decides that they're gonna rush onto the ship against Cat's wishes to see if their parents are still stuck on there.
Gee, Cat, why are you playing around with the extraterrestrial spaceman stuff? We're supposed to be looking for our parents!
They end up being chased by the aliens, which leads to Dog basically hijacking their spaceship and taking it on a joyride. All of the aliens abandon ship before we see Dog crash the ship on the top layer of a frozen lake. And of course, the very lake that they crashed on just so happens to be home to a gigantic lake monster with razor-sharp teeth, which perfectly lines up with theory number 37.
Cat! It's Theory number 37! Mom and Dad got swallowed by Bessie, the mysterious lake monster!
We're about to be eaten by Theory 37!
Dog gets the bright idea to look for their parents inside of the lake monster, so he ejects them from the ship and swims right towards the monster in an effort to get swallowed. They go on an epic ride through the innards of the monster before they are dropped right into the stomach of the beast. Of course, they don't find their parents there, and it's not long before the monster's belly starts filling up with stomach acid and CatDog has to try to make a quick escape. Cat hacks up a hairball, which gives him the idea to shed off all their fur and make a giant hairball so the monster will have to hack it up. The plan is a success as they are launched out of the monster's body and go flying into the night sky.
Reminds me how Mom used to wrap us up in hairballs and throw us in the air!
CatDog miraculously grows their fur back just in time for the hairball to crash land in a strange dark forest. Dog sniffs around for a while and eventually stumbles upon a tree with a mysterious red glow, or as he likes to call it, Theory number 2001.
Our parents fell down a tree hole and were captured by a tribe of evil mutant wood nymphs. Well, I guess I was wrong. Nothing in there but red-hot Peruvian fire ants.
Cat gets completely fed up and declares that they're going straight to Yonderland with no more side trips. No more aliens, no more monsters, no more fire ants, just them going straight there. That is, until he stumbles upon a sign for Yokelburg, home of happy cats and dogs living together in peace for 50 years. They excitedly head towards Yokelburg, which has two houses in the middle of it that look very similar to CatDog's house. They walk into town and I can't help but notice that the place is full of backwoods simple folk who are just living their best life out in the middle of nowhere.
Well, howdy, friend!
Welcome to Yokelburg!
We all celebrating 50 years of peace and harmony.
You come to join the festivities? Well, shut my mouth and grease me up. I sure enough wanna join a oopsie-doo.
The community is celebrating 50 years of peace, and as the music starts, CatDog notices what seems to be an older CatDog singing that, at first glance, looks like it could be their parents, which lines up perfectly with theory number 76.
One day, Mama and Daddy were wandering through the forest, and they got hit on the head by a big old giant redwood tree. And gosh darn it, when they woke up, they thought they was country western singers.
CatDog starts making their way through the packed crowd, and there is no shortage of peculiar people to be seen in this town.
Have some home-brewed catniparilla, cuz.
They start to approach what they assume to be their parents, as the greasers, who've been trailing them this whole time, are hot on their tail ready to pound CatDog and their parents. CatDog approaches the country singers, and things seem to go well, at least at first.
Welcome back! Here we are!
Lube! Lube! Oh, Lube, you're back! My baby's come back, my son, my child, my boy, my chip off the old block!
After feeling really down in the dumps about the duo not being their parents, Lube's dad then approaches Cat.
That's the one, Paul. Him. He burped right up in my little old face.
Hang on a minute. Did you just burp in my pretty little girl's face, boy?
Well, of course I didn't.
That's your dad. I even smelled it.
Dog.
Real hot dog. Well, you know what that means.
In these here parts, darling, if y'all burp in somebody's face, that means you got marriage on your mind.
This turns the celebration into a completely unplanned wedding that Cat is literally dragged into by the girl that he has no interest in. Cat gets desperate and ends up saying something really offensive to about 50% of the population of Yokelburg.
Dog, you yapping fleabag! I don't want to get married, especially to some lousy dog!
And just like that, CatDog reignited the 50-year settled feud between the cats and dogs in Yokelburg. Hairballs and bones start flying as a war is raging between both parties in town. It's a vicious battle that seems to get more brutal as the scene goes on.
Grab your bone, boys!
During the battle, the bridge over the river down below gets cut off, and CatDog is stretched between the two big houses in town. With both sides having run out of ammo, they use CatDog as a bridge to meet each other in hand-to-hand combat in the middle. But CatDog's body can only hold so much weight, and everyone in town ends up sinking down to the river, then getting slingshotted back up into Yokelburg, while CatDog gets launched back down below to float on a log in the river. As they float away, CatDog sees the city of Yokelburg fall down into ruins. Cliff, who is still in Yokelburg, convinces the town people that they should stop fighting and direct their anger towards CatDog.
To pounding us some CatDog. Yeah, that's right. There's a dog that makes sense.
Cat and Dog make up while they're floating on the log down the river, just in time for them to get launched down a waterfall. When they reach the bottom, the pool of water that they end up in flushes like a toilet, and they get sucked down and then spit out of a geyser in Yonderland. They look for like all of 30 seconds, then Dog jumps to the conclusion that their parents aren't there. He has an immediate, uncharacteristic change of demeanor.
Looking for our parents was a dumb idea.
Right!
Let's just go home.
Go home? Go what? Did you say go home? But what about the rest of your theories?
Theories. My theories are stupid.
Dog decides to quit and that he isn't going to look for their parents anymore. Cat has a sudden change of heart and admits that he wishes that he was more like Dog and that he had never lost hope that their parents are out there. More importantly, he says he isn't going to let Dog give up searching for their parents. The two come to the conclusion that no matter what happens, they will always be brothers and will always have each other. Just then, another earthquake starts as the geysers are about to blow. CatDog runs away as they crash into a big blue four-eyed Sasquatch. The Sasquatch picks them up and carries them away, climbing up a rock formation and taking them into a cave. After running CatDog to safety, the Sasquatch stops, holding CatDog in hand.
Hi-ho, diggity!
Mommy! Daddy!
I finally found my boys.
Oh, what's for dinner?
Cat asks about why they aren't a CatDog too, and Mom explains that they actually found CatDog out on the ledge outside when they were babies.
Well, then where did we come from?
Well, dear, we really don't know.
Heck, we don't know where your mother came from either, but that doesn't matter because she's your mother and you're our boys.
Then we get to see a nice montage that shows how great CatDog's childhood was, and that Dog's memories that he recalls are all true. And we also get a glimpse into that sad, fateful day when CatDog was separated from their parents. We also learn that CatDog's parents have been searching for them this entire time, and plot twist, all of Dog's bizarre theories were completely true and they actually happened.
Strangest things kept happening to us. We was frozen in an Arctic glacier, marooned on an island of rabid weasels, abducted by aliens, swallowed by a giant lake monster, captured by a tribe of evil mutant wood nymphs, and we even thought we was country and western singers for a while.
Their mother even kept the other half of the pacifier that Cat's been hiding all these years. After a while, Winslow shows up, seeming sad that CatDog will probably be moving out of the house that they all live in, but then he turns into his usual jerky self and leaves, saying that he found some friends of theirs. Just then, the greasers and all the folks from Yokelburg show up to beat up CatDog, but they get scared away by CatDog's parents.
Hey, everybody! This is our mom and dad!
Hello.
Hiya.
The group finally works up the nerve to attack CatDog and their parents, but right when Dog starts to go into defense mode, old Up and Chuck erupts again, and Cat valiantly uses it to help his family escape together. With the CatDog family having escaped, everyone left behind gets eaten by the lake monster, which seems to show up out of thin air. From there, the episode ends with CatDog celebrating their own parents' day at home, having been newly reunited with their mom and dad. We get a nice little montage of the family doing activities together and enjoying each other's company.
Parents! Oh, we got parents! Small, slimy, big, and grimy parents!
Though we might seem strange to you,
We are parrots through and through.
I bet yours are weirdos too!
Because they're parents.
And that's it. With that triple-length episode, there were still some unanswered questions. Specifically, we don't know where exactly CatDog came from, but we do know that they do have parents that love them very much and that they were looking for them this whole time. After this episode, there were only 5 more episodes of CatDog that had aired before they finally ended the series, but I personally feel like this movie should have been the end of CatDog. I really think that this would have wrapped everything up nicely and put a shiny bow on it, leaving us with the sense that CatDog would go on living life at home with their parents from now on. But what do you think? Did you enjoy this episode when it came out? Do you remember seeing it when it originally aired on Nickelodeon all the way back in 2000? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like so that more people can see it, and if you aren't subscribed yet, then hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any new videos. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
One fine day with a splash and a smack, CatDog finally did come back. Thankful for everything that they had. A huge hairy mom and a little green dad. CatDog, 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 CatDog. Alone no more is a little CatDog. CatDog, CatDog.
On the surface, Courage the Cowardly Dog is a show with a genius premise. It's a show that takes place in a creepy old house in the middle of nowhere that tends to play on tropes from classic and popular horror films. In my opinion, it had a completely different vibe from anything Cartoon Network was doing at the time. Courage the Cowardly Dog premiered on Cartoon Network in November of 1999. At the time of premiere, it was aired alongside the likes of Dexter's Laboratory, Johnny Bravo, the Powerpuff Girls, Ed, Edd n Eddy, and so on. All shows that had radically different premises, but at the core, they were all children's cartoons that relied heavily on comedy to entertain the viewer. Whereas Courage the Cowardly Dog definitely relied on comedy, it wasn't the same kind of comedy you'd see in a light-hearted show like the Powerpuff Girls. The comedy was often dark and surreal, as we would see the main characters thrown into bizarre, disturbing, and often paranormal or supernatural situations. The show's creator, John R. Dilworth, would originally pitch the series to the show What a Cartoon with a pilot titled The Chicken from Outer Space.
what?
Which would air on Cartoon Network in February of 1996. The pilot was such a hit that it was nominated for an Academy Award, though it ultimately lost to Wallace and Gromit. Due to the popularity of the pilot, Cartoon Network gave Dilworth the green light for a series, and the rest is history. The show had 4 seasons that were complete gold in my opinion. Where shows like SpongeBob SquarePants and The Fairly OddParents would lose steam after a few seasons and decline in quality, Courage the Cowardly Dog is a show that I feel maintained consistent quality from start to finish. John R. Dilworth is someone that I personally look up to. I admire the way that he was able to create such a fantastic show with a clever premise that never once declined in quality. He seems like a great person as well. I'm in a Facebook group that's dedicated to Courage the Cowardly Dog, which he's one of the admins of, and although I've never personally interacted with him, it says a lot about his character that he's willing to be so in tune with his fans and the community built around the show that he created. As for the show itself though, there's a wide variety of episodes that convey a massive spectrum of feelings. Some of them are lighthearted and kooky, and some are genuinely scary and chilling. Some are wholesome, but the beauty about a show like Courage the Cowardly Dog having the kind of premise that it has is that it's afforded the opportunity to get as dark as it wants without it seeming out of character, and boy did it get dark at times. There's some episodes that truly pushed the envelope, but never in a way that crossed lines by any means. However, on today's nostalgic walk down memory lane, we're going to check out an episode that I truly believe is the darkest episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog. It's an episode so dark that even John R. Dilworth himself stated in an interview that he could not believe Cartoon Network allowed this episode to be aired, mainly due to its strong themes of abuse, domestic violence, misogyny, misandry, and homosexuality. The episode in question is the season 4 episode, The Mask. This episode starts out at the farmhouse with Courage napping by the chicken coop while Muriel collects eggs from the hens. We pan over to see what appears to be a mysterious person dressed in a white robe and a white mask with seemingly feminine features. The person walks right up to Courage and this happens.
Dogs are evil.
Who?
Oh, playing with your new friend? That's grand. Pleased to meet you. Courage doesn't make many friends, you know. We'd love it if you'd join us for tea.
As Muriel walks away, the person proceeds to beat Courage senseless with a washing machine. We then cut right on over to the kitchen of the Bag household.
My name is Kitty, and I've come from the wrong side of the tracks. My closest friend, Bunny.
Yes?
Fell in love with a gangster. He treats her like she's his slave.
My kind of guy.
He's a low-down, dirty dog.
Oh, gracious me.
When he found out I was trying to get Bunny to run away, he threatened my life.
Oh, my.
Muriel empathizes with Kitty as Courage points out his awful head wound, but he's quickly dismissed by both Muriel and Eustace, who tell him to stop interrupting. Kitty explains that she was forced to leave her home and her best friend, but she's lost without her. She says that she can't face the truth that she'll never see her best friend again.
Take that mask off, you might see better.
Dogs are evil.
Eustace, let's not mention her mask again.
Telling me what to do. Let's mask if I want to.
Later that night, we see Courage watching TV all by himself in the living room when Kitty approaches him. She proceeds to beat him with a halibut while Muriel stands by idly, thinking that they're just having fun. Later that night, we see Courage come upon Muriel, who's unclogging the toilet. He offers to help, and Muriel walks away to get Eustace.
Evil dogs.
Sorry. Sorry.
You fixed the toilet, Eustace. Good job.
Blah, blah, blah.
At dinner that night, we see Eustace, Muriel, and Kitty all sitting at the table. Eustace blatantly asks her why she wears the mask, to which she says that she doesn't want to have to face reality.
We all must face reality.
Really? Like how you sneak extra sweets when no one is watching?
Oh!
Muriel!
And you say you can fix anything.
After Muriel, I fixed it.
That night, Muriel shows Kitty up to her room in the attic, and everybody goes to bed.
Eustace, do you think I eat too much?
Nah, the masked lady. I can fix anything.
Well, good night, Eustace.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Courage is peeking through the keyhole into Kitty's room where he sees her playing with a small toy mouse as she then proceeds to take off her mask, and at that moment, we see her face for the first time. Courage runs downstairs to seek help from Eustace and Muriel, and it's a bit hard to translate Courage, but it looks like he's basically trying to tell him that she's a monster. Muriel says that Courage needs to stop making assumptions, and that all they know is that she's from the wrong side of the tracks.
To better understand her, try to see the world the way she sees it.
Courage thinks about the mouse and tries to figure out the significance of it. However, he just gets the idea to take the mouse and show the police in hopes that Kitty's wanted and to have them confront her and take her away. With Muriel and Eustace asleep, Courage locks them in their room and he puts his plan into action. We see him scale the side of the house and go into Kitty's room where she's sleeping while holding the mouse. He very carefully attempts to take it by tickling her with a massive feather so that he can snag it while she's scratching herself. Courage then goes down, hops into Eustace's truck, and he just drives away. We cut over to a diner that Courage is at when this happens.
To Kitty love Bunny?
Hey, there'll be none of that around here. Ain't that Kitty's mouse? You a friend of Kitty and Bunny? Right. Bunny's in a bad way without Kitty. These two was the sweetest gals that ever lived. But Bunny's guy, Mad Dog, he didn't like 'em being so friendly-like. He's one nasty piece of jealousy.
The rat tells Courage that Mad Dog and his gang live down the road and that after he gets Bunny out of there, tell her that Charlie says hey. Back at the farmhouse, we see Muriel panicking because the door is locked and she needs to go to the bathroom. She wakes Eustace to help her and he fails to open it and kick it down, hurting himself in the process.
Eustace, Kitty was right about you. You can't fix a thing.
Oh, yeah? You want some chocolate?
Meanwhile, Courage is off parking the truck as he proceeds to cross over to the wrong side of the tracks and approach a large building with an ominous red light emanating from its windows.
Move your tail, Bunny.
Back at the farmhouse, Kitty wakes up and she realizes that the mouse she was holding is gone, and she panics as Muriel and Eustace hear her yelling and blaming Courage for stealing the mouse, which makes Muriel think that Kitty is in trouble. Back at the creepy building, we see Bunny and Mad Dog sitting on a couch.
Come on, Bunny. Don't I make you happy no more? Or maybe you're still thinking about Kitty. I told you to forget her. I take you from a two-bit joint and make you a class act. If I even smell Kitty, I'll bury the two of you. Oh, Bunny, you know you're my girl. Let's go back to the way we was. You know, happy like. Everything's okay.
Bunny quickly attaches Mad Dog's collar to a light fixture as she attempts to make an escape. But as she goes for the door, 2 giant dogs catch her, and we hear her struggling with them as Courage is outside the window on the fire escape. We cut over to the farmhouse where we see Kitty banging on the door and panicking as Eustace tries everything from picking the lock to banging on the doorknob to get her out, none of which works. Meanwhile, Muriel is in her room by the door when she comes upon a bobby pin, which she easily uses to pick the lock and make her way out. We cut back over to the creepy building where this happens.
Oh, Kitty. Help me before they return.
Courage straight up throws himself through the window and makes quick work of digging Bunny out. When one of the huge dogs hears the commotion and walks in, we see Courage turn the light out as he literally destroys the dog with a shovel, leaving it unconscious and injured. We cut over to the farmhouse again, where this is happening.
What in the world are you doing, man?
Stand back, Muriel. I can't open the door any other way.
That's all right, Eustace. Try this.
Just a bobby pin, huh? I could have thought of that.
I've decided to cut back on my sweets. She's gone.
Back at the scary building, we see 2 dogs with massive head wounds buried in the pot that Bunny was in as Courage is nearby recovering from the obviously hefty battle. Mad Dog starts to approach as Courage throws himself out of the window and escapes.
There's no way down.
We see a train approaching in the distance as Courage and Bunny are fleeing on foot. Meanwhile, Mad Dog is in pursuit in his pink car. Courage nobly gives Bunny the mouse toy that belongs to Kitty as he tells her to run, leaving himself as a target for Mad Dog to hit. However, at the last second, Mad Dog turns as he races after Bunny at full speed, seeming ready to just mow her down in cold blood. Courage sprints after the car at full speed and jumps through the back window as he grabs the steering wheel and gets the car on the train tracks, going head first into the train. We see the train continue to go by, but at the end of it is none other than Kitty, sitting at the last car as she calls out to Bunny, who sprints to catch up to her.
Kitty, that dog saved my life. He saved my life.
I was wrong, Bunny. Not all dogs are bad. Now we can be best friends forever.
After a job well done, Courage drives the truck home in the morning, looking like he's had a hell of a night. Muriel says that they've been waiting for him all night as he hops up onto her lap to finally rest.
Kitty's gone, but she's left something behind. Eustace has taken a fancy to it.
Well, it doesn't work. Ah! Muriel, you got a bobby pin?
This episode was just really heavy overall. Before we get into the analysis, I just want to point out that John R. Dilworth has gone on record saying that canonically, Kitty and Bunny are lesbians and are in fact in a relationship. All in all, John was right in being surprised that Cartoon Network allowed this episode to be aired. There's a lot of themes in this episode that were dark in general, but especially considering the time frame that this episode aired and the implication that Kitty and Bunny are in a relationship. Nowadays, as it pertains particularly to TV, media, children's cartoons, The LGBTQ+ community is pretty widely accepted. It's completely normal to see a show portray a same-sex couple in this day and age. But back in the 90s and early 2000s, that definitely wasn't the case. If a show wanted to portray a relationship like that back then, it was more often than not hinted at or implied like it was in this episode. They never once mentioned them being lovers, and they only referred to each other as best friends, but looking back at this episode, it's rather obvious what they were trying to portray. That's a bold move for the show, and a bold move for Cartoon Network to air an episode like this during the time that it did. Back then, shows weren't really progressive in that regard, and society as a whole wasn't as accepting as the LGBTQ+ community as it is nowadays. In a lot of ways, episodes like this can be considered pioneers for directing TV and cartoons in the direction of normalizing same-sex relationships, which in my opinion is a fantastic thing. Representation is very important, and it makes me happy that society and TV have grown over time to be more welcoming to all genders and orientations. Aside from that though, there's quite a bit to unpack here. Kitty's transformation throughout the episode is an amazing thing to watch. In the beginning, she's an angry, spiteful person who literally beats Courage senseless just based on the fact that he's a dog. She's heartbroken and left with deep trauma based on what happened between her and Bunny. However, throughout the chain of events, it's shown to her that not all dogs are bad. She ends up thanking Courage by the end. Despite the way that Kitty had treated him, Courage still did the right thing and saved Bunny's life and reunited the two. This not only says a lot about Courage's character, but it also did a huge thing for Kitty. It showed her that there is good in this world. I don't know how Kitty ended up on the train, I don't know where she was planning on going, and I don't know what happened to Kitty and Bunny after this, but I like to think that they took the train far from nowhere and started a new happy life together. The series of events that were portrayed here were really intense though, and honestly something I never thought I'd witness on a children's show. We see Bunny stuck in what's essentially a domestic violence situation with Mad Dog, who ended up holding her hostage and nearly taking her life. There are a lot of toxic behavior shown in this episode in many different regards, but I definitely have to highlight Mad Dog, who takes the cake for toxicity. This guy is literally huge and intimidating and orders poor Bunny around like she's his property. We see her dragged in the building by Mad Dog as they sit on the couch. He literally threatens to murder both Kitty and Bunny if he ever catches even just a whiff of her again. After his threatening and toxic behavior makes Bunny cry, he starts to hug her and show affection to her in an effort to make everything better. Just in case you're not familiar, this is called love bombing. It's a common tactic used by abusers to justify their toxic and negative behavior. The abuser will usually act like a literal piece of human garbage towards their partner, then afterwards, in an effort to make everything better, they'll shower them with affection or gifts in an effort to remedy the situation, and in some cases, put their own conscience at ease. The height of toxicity comes at the end, when we see Bunny and Courage running from Mad Dog and he chases her in his car at full speed, essentially adopting the mindset of, if I can't have Bunny, then no one can. The behavior that's portrayed by Mad Dog in this episode is just disgusting, and it really blows my mind that Cartoon Network allowed this to be aired, but in some ways, I'm glad they did. This episode is full of life lessons to be learned and is a great example of how not to treat a partner. This also comes full circle with how they portrayed Eustace's and Muriel's relationship. After Kitty, who, mind you, was in one of the darkest moments of her life, pointed out that Muriel sneaks treats when no one's around or watching, and that Eustace can't actually fix anything, we see them begin to take digs at each other in a very petty way. Eustace puts Muriel down for her love of sweets, and Muriel puts Eustace down for his less than stellar handyman capabilities. Though they did end up apologizing to each other and hugging it out by the end of the episode, it was still sad to see them turn against each other in such a way. It was definitely toxic on both of their parts to weaponize each other's weaknesses to bring each other down, but I'm glad that by the end of the episode they saw the error of their ways and both apologized. Now, toxic behavior set aside, there's a few random things that I need to bring up. First of all, from the start of the episode, Courage was terrified of Kitty, even when she was just a mysterious masked figure, which is understandable. His first meeting of her involved him getting completely bludgeoned by her, so of course he's gonna be terrified. That mask is also pretty creepy, and her demeanor was rather ominous, so you can't blame him for being scared. But oddly enough, Courage's fear seems to reach an all-time high during this scene where he's looking in through the keyhole at her room and he sees her take off her mask for the first time. For some reason, when he sees her face for the first time, he is just petrified. This wouldn't really make much sense. Like, his initial fear of her is definitely warranted, but it confused me that the fact that she was a cat just scared the daylights out of him. I mean, I guess if we keep in mind that the only other cat that Courage has interacted with in the series was Cats, who has tormented him for many episodes, it kind of makes sense. Maybe he's just scared of felines in general as a result of Cats' constant tormenting, but still, initially it was just kind of a weird thing to witness. I also have to bring up the scene where Courage and Bunny are escaping the big scary building. Initially, we see Courage find Bunny because he's on the fire escape looking through the window. However, when it comes time for them to escape, Bunny tries climbing down the ladder, but it doesn't reach all the way down. Courage ends up unlatching the ladder, and it completely disattaches from the fire escape as Courage, Bunny, and the ladder fall a good solid like 15 or 20 feet from the top floor of this building. This is just kind of confusing in a number of ways. First of all, how did Courage get up there? There's a chance that he scaled his way up there like he did to Kitty's window at the house. However, this building is really high, and the fact that he's on the fire escape just kind of implies that he climbed up the fire escape itself. But like, even further than that, what's the point of this fire escape? It's literally up like 3 or 4 stories and the ladder doesn't even reach the bottom? What's the point of even having a ladder on it if he can't climb down in the event of an emergency? Like, in all reality, if this building did end up on fire and fully involved, people would climb out the window and onto the fire escape and literally just have nowhere to go but stay there and burn. That specific point doesn't necessarily contribute to how dark this episode is, but it's definitely something weird that I just felt the need to bring up. The last thing that I need to bring up is Kitty's mask. Partway into this episode, she reveals to Eustace and Muriel that she wears the mask because she doesn't want to have to face reality. That, in and of itself, is sad and very dark, but I do see where she's coming from, all things considered. This is a rather blatant reference to personality masking. In a psychological sense, masking is the act of hiding your authentic self in an effort to gain greater social acceptance. One whose masking is essentially camouflaging their true personality and emotions. In this case, Kitty is literally masking to hide her true emotions and trauma from the general public. This was symbolic, and it hit really hard for me. However, things take an interesting turn partway into the episode. We see Kitty take her mask off at nighttime to go to bed, and she literally never puts it back on. She was so distraught by losing the mouse that Bunny gave her that she ended up leaving the farm through a window in a rush and completely just leaving behind her mask. It's essentially implying that wearing the mask and carrying around the mouse that Bunny gave her was a coping mechanism for her to be able to process what she had been through and to keep her composure. However, when she found out that the mouse was gone, all bets were off and she completely lost it. Understandably. That mouse is a symbol of Bunny's love for Kitty. It was a gift that Bunny gave her, and at this point, it's literally the only thing she has left of Bunny other than the memories that they share together. It was as if without that mouse, all bets were off and any attempt at masking was just off the table completely, which, again, is totally understandable. We can't blame Kitty for being devastated at the loss of that mouse, given all the trauma that she's had to face at this point. However, at the very end, something really interesting happens. Courage comes home and cuddles up in Muriel's lap to take a nap, as Muriel explains that Kitty left something behind and Eustace has taken a liking to it, as we see Eustace working on the furnace in the basement while wearing Kitty's mask. This right here has some pretty heavy implications with it. Essentially, this is directly implying that Eustace is wearing the mask as he doesn't want to have to face reality, much like Kitty did. However, this leaves us as viewers pondering, what harsh reality does Eustace not want to have to face? There's many things that can come to mind here. Maybe it's his terrible relationship with his brother Horace. Maybe it's his terrible relationship with his mother, who always put Horace above Eustace. Maybe it's because he lives with a guilty conscience due to the way that he treats Courage and literally everyone else around him. Truly, there's no way to know outside of speculation. However, you have to recognize that what's being implied here is definitely dark and certainly leaves us as viewers wondering. But what do you think? Is this the darkest episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog? Can you think of one that might just be darker than this one? let me know in the comments down below. I always love seeing your guys' feedback. If you enjoyed this video, do me a huge solid and leave me a comment letting me know what you think, and maybe share it with a friend. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.
Stupid dog!
Previously on The Dark Side of Hey Arnold. Frankie took Arnold under his wing, took him out to eat, took him to an arcade and a movie, and showed him a good time in an attempt to groom Arnold into breaking into this building.
I was just trying to ask you where's the bus stop.
Let's just straight up address the elephant in the room. This episode is obviously a metaphor for school shooter incidents. With dark circles under his eyes and in a frantic state, he tells Arnold about the doll that he made and how he thinks that his curse killed Principal Warts. A lot of people think that the ending of this episode is a metaphor for death, particularly committing suicide, which I can definitely see. The overall tone of his conversation with Arnold, combined with how he flies off into the sunset, seems to kind of hint in that direction. As I said in my last episode of The Dark Side of Hey Arnold is a show that played a very interesting role in the ecosystem of Nicktoons. The situations portrayed in this cartoon weren't too far from the scope of reality, and the premise was fairly down to earth. It's a show about kids growing up in the city and the challenges they face on a daily basis. It's kind of a feel-good show where pretty much every episode has a happy ending. It was aesthetically pleasing, the characters were relatable, and every episode seemed to have an important moral or life lesson to be learned. However, be it either in plain sight or hidden behind subcontext, there was a slew of dark moments and morbid situations that were presented throughout the show. If you didn't see the last episode in this series, I highly recommend you check it out after you finish this video. I'll have it linked down in the description box. Long story short, it focused on morbid episodes with dark moments that taught important life lessons through the moral of the story. However, for this next episode, we're focusing on a topic that I can't wait to dive into. Even as I'm writing this script right now, I'm sitting in my chair at my day job, literally so excited to explore these episodes. As I said in my last video, I've got really cool plans for future episodes in this series, and this episode you're watching right now is one of those ideas that I was the most excited about. Throughout the series of Hey Arnold, we would see plenty of characters introduced. Some were simple characters that didn't have too many layers to them and were pretty straightforward. What you see was what you get, you know? But other characters, to put in Shrek terms, were like onions. They have layers of complexity that, when you peel them back and look further with more context given, it really explains a lot of how the character thinks, behaves, and overall explains why they are the way that they are. There's a few characters like this that appear throughout the series, but today we're going to deep dive into a character that might be the most complex of them all. I know this video is really long, but bear with me because I'm about to blow your freaking mind. That's why today on our nostalgic walk down memory lane, we're going to take an in-depth look at the mind and backstory of Helga Pataki in an effort to explore why she is how she is and what led to her being the person that she is. So really quick, I just want to say thank you so much for checking out my channel and specifically this series. When I came up with the idea for the Dark Side of series, I was really unsure if you all would be interested, but the support I got from you guys in the comments was really overwhelming. I really appreciate your feedback, and I'm so glad you enjoy the idea of this series. Do me a solid and drop a like on this video if you enjoy it, and leave me a comment letting me know what you think. Also, if you aren't already subscribed to my channel, now would be a perfect time to do that. It's completely free, it helps me tremendously, and it's a good way to make sure that you don't miss future videos that I upload, especially this series. I am setting a goal to hopefully reach 100,000 subscribers by the end of this year, and I'd love your help with reaching that goal. Thank you so much, and let's get right into it. Helga Geraldine Pataki. She's a 9-year-old girl who had a really troubled upbringing and family life. To quote the Hey Arnold wiki, despite her outfit, Helga is a tomboyish girl, as evidenced by her interest in playing contact sports alongside her male classmates, blatant lack of femininity, and disregard to near dislike for stereotypical female behavior. We'll expand a little more on that bit in a little while. As for her personality, throughout the series she's portrayed as very cynical, violent, selfish, and kind of a bully. She tends to boss around a lot of her peers, including her best friend Phoebe. However, Helga does have a soft side that tends to show mainly when she's all alone. She's a really emotional character who shows a wide variety of emotions ranging from love to hate in an extreme manner that can change in the drop of a hat. She is also very intelligent, as we see in the episode The Aptitude Test, when she gets a perfect score on the standardized exam that the whole class takes. Though she is really intelligent, she tends to get below average grades, mainly due to her lack of motivation and overall lack of interest in academics in general. We also see her smart side show through her remarkable gift for poetry, which is seen vastly through her use of vocabulary and the dramatic soliloquies that she belts out when she's talking about her love for Arnold, which all of us know is a huge secret and a massive defining character trait for Helga. She is madly in love with Arnold and refuses to tell him or anyone except for her best friend Phoebe, and she often hides her love for Arnold with her abrasive comments and treating him like she hates him. All of these character traits and quirks are things that we're going to expand upon further throughout this video, but I think for the start it would be best for us to go forward but also backwards at the same time. By that, I mean we're going to start off by looking at the season 4 episode Helga on the Couch. Though this episode came later on towards the end of the series, it provides a really prodigious amount of context and backstory that plays a pivotal part in us understanding Helga as a character and why she is how she is. It's one of those episodes that really helped us all as viewers understand why Helga treats people the way that she treats them, and it shines some light on the history of her family situation. The episode begins with the start of the school day at PS 118. We see a psychologist named Dr. Bliss introducing herself to Principal Warts. The school district budgeted for a child psychologist to come in on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Dr. Bliss is here to observe the students for the day.
I really don't think you'll find much that would interest psychologists.
Oh? Why not?
Because, Doctor, unlike PS 117 and PS 119, PS 118 is the picture of mental health.
We then cut to Helga, who is angrily walking through the halls, pushing people over and insulting random kids. Helga sits down in class and tells Phoebe that she has a headache.
Oh, yes. Well, welcome.
Hey, who's the skirt?
Class, settle down, please. Listening ears. Today we have a very special guest, our school district psychologist, Dr. Bliss.
Whoop-de-doo, the school shrink. Bring it on. I've got nothing to hide.
Mr. Simmons is very nervous about Dr. Bliss out of fear that he's being observed by her, even though she's there for the kids specifically, but that's beside the point here. Dr. Bliss observes Helga as she shoots spitballs at Arnold all day and periodically stops to stare at him with googly eyes until the class breaks for recess.
Phoebe, go save my 4-square cord. And if Harold tries to take it, tell him I'll pull his appendix out. The old-fashioned way. Saving!
That's a great example of Helga bossing her best friend around and making threats. We'll dig further into that a little later, so keep that in the back of your mind. Arnold walks by and Helga talks bad about him behind his back until he's out of eyesight, and she breaks into one of her deeply worded soliloquies about him.
How I hate him, and yet I love him. Oh, Arnold, bastion of sanity in this crazy mixed-up world in which we live. How tender I feel when you brush past me. How I forget my cares. How the essence of you lingers, sweetening the air, and I feel peace.
Brainy comes up at the end of her talking, and Dr. Bliss witnesses her punch Brainy in the face like she normally does, and Dr. Bliss is very shocked by it. We cut to Helga in the principal's office with Warts and Dr. Blitz as she attempts to rationalize her actions.
Brainy? He doesn't mind. I do it all the time. What? You'd suck him too if he was standing there behind you breathing.
Breathing?
Yes, breathing.
Young lady, that is quite enough.
Dr. Bliss recommends that Helga meet with her after school on Tuesdays and Thursdays.
To punish you soundly for your blatantly insouciant acts of juvenile delinquency.
Principal Warts, please sit down. May I handle this?
Yes, fine. Of course. Take it away, Doctor.
If you like Dr. Bliss explains that the point isn't to punish Helga, but it's to explore her antisocial tendencies and talk about ways to improve. Dr. Bliss thinks that Helga's behavior is hiding deeper, more important issues, and she wants to uncover some emotions that Helga is hiding. Later on, we see Helga walking home and talking to herself.
Thinks I'm crazy, hiding something. It's okay, Helga, girl. You're fine. You can do it. You're not nuts.
Clearly, she thinks Dr. Bliss is trying to uncover her secret love for Arnold. She gets home and we see this happen.
Ah, this never would have happened to Olga. Look, is this gonna cost me anything? Good. Hold it right there, Missy. Report to the trophy room pronto.
That comment about Olga really drives me nuts, and that's another thing that we're going to dive deeper into, so again, keep that in the back of your mind as well.
Don't want you blabbing to some school shrink. We Patakis don't talk about things. We sweep them under the rug.
Some things are best swept under the rug, Helga.
Whatever you do, don't blab anything, or they'll give us all a one-way ticket to the funny farm. You got it?
I got it, Dad.
This never would have happened to Olga.
Oh, I know, P.
Helga goes to her room and right into her closet where we see her shrine for Arnold, which is yet again another thing that we're going to dive deeper into, so again, keep that in the back of your mind.
Oh, Arnold, I call on the power of thy sacred shrine. Give me the strength and animal cunning to outwit the school shrink.
Helga trips on some wires and falls, which leads to her parents coming in to check on her when they see her wearing the Arnold helmet. Bob says,
"Yeesh, what a nut job."
And Miriam simply responds with,
I need a smoothie.
We then cut to Helga as she's walking into the psychologist's office. Helga plans to just make up stories for an hour and not let Dr. Bliss get a word in.
So you're a child psychologist?
That's right.
Does that mean you weren't good enough to be a grown-up psychologist?
No, it means I chose child psychology because I'm interested in helping children.
Helga spends the next few minutes judging and critiquing Dr. Bliss and questioning her abilities as a psychologist.
Nice picture. You like Edward Hopper?
I do.
Yeah, he's okay. He's a little simple, though. And what's his deal with women, anyway?
That's pretty astute for a 4th grader.
This right here is another great example of just how smart Helga is. She's able to identify a painting and give a rather intelligent observation regarding the artist's choices based on his previous work. Helga decides that she's going to be the one asking the questions, and she's going to sit on the big seat while Dr. Bliss sits on the couch. Helga asks questions and comes to the realization that her and Dr. Bliss have a mutual interest in jump rope.
And they get in fights. This is what they say. Boys are rotten, made out of cotton. Girls are sassy, made from molasses. Boys go to Jupiter to get more stupider. Girls go to college to get more knowledge.
This connection over jump rope is just the in that Dr. Bliss needed to break down the walls and get through to Helga. Helga keeps questioning her, and Dr. Bliss confides in Helga about her problems with her sister, to which Helga responds by bringing up her issues with Olga.
You think that's annoying? Try having a sister that's perfect.
Perfect? What do you mean perfect?
Well, she gets straight A's at Bennington College. All the boys want to go out with her, but she's got to stay home and practice the piano for the Brandenburg concerto she's giving at the orphanage this weekend. And Mom and Dad can't get enough of her. Last time she was home, I was going out of my mind.
We then cut to a sitcom-style flashback of Olga when she was last home, and her parents fawning over her, complete with music and a laugh track to complement the aesthetic. Helga walks in and interrupts the touching moment.
Did you pick up my winter coat from the cleaners?
What? Oh, Helga, I forgot. All the excitement. Your sister being home from Alaska. But don't worry, because the weatherman said that it should stay above freezing for most of the day.
Being stroked with migrating salmon, Lake Glacier, the towering peak of McKinley.
I'm going to school now.
Helga tells Dr. Bliss that she feels like no one in her house even realizes that she exists. She almost slips up and reveals the one thing that she's trying her hardest not to have come to light.
I think I'd go crazy if it wasn't for Arnold. Are no air conditioners working in this entire building? It must be 90 degrees in here.
Helga goes to leave, saying that she's talked out, and Dr. Bliss says that she still has 49 minutes left in the session. Helga says that she's on to Dr. Bliss and how she's trying to relate to her to get her to say anything she wants.
We can talk about Arnold.
Arnold?
That seems to help get Helga's full attention. Dr. Bliss tells Helga that she thinks Arnold is special to her, noting that in class she threw 57 spitballs and stared at him the entire time. She notes that she gives a large amount of attention to Arnold, which Helga does her best to dismiss. They then move on to an ink blot test.
I want you to look at these and describe what you see.
Architecture of some kind? An inverted soup tureen that's on fire. Hot in here. Aren't you tired of this? I mean, what do a bunch of ink blots tell you anyway? They're just ink blots.
Helga gets Dr. Bliss to move on, and next they do some word association.
Love.
Hate.
Rocket.
Pocket. Pocket. Davy Crockett.
Football.
Head. Did I say head? I mean game. Football game.
Monday.
Night football. Enough word associations.
After that, Dr. Bliss goes on to bring up the fact that Helga feels like no one at home notices that she exists, and Dr. Bliss says that that's sad and it must feel really lonely. She specifically brings up Helga's mom and asks if she ever notices Helga. Helga tells a story of how she was running late for school and she looked for her mom for help with lunch.
She's asleep behind the couch.
Again?
What? Oh, I was just looking for my keys.
They're hanging on the hook, Miriam.
Oh, good.
Mom, I'm late for school and no one made my lunch.
Oh, yeah, I did, honey. I put it out for you. It's around here somewhere. Oh, here it is.
Moist towelettes, an individual packet of crackers, and a can of shaving cream.
Dr. Bliss follows up by asking about Helga's dad next. Helga explains that all he cares about is her older sister Olga, and that goes back as far as Helga can remember.
Wonderful, honey.
You're a stinking genius.
Daddy, who's gonna take me to preschool?
Eh? Oh, yeah, sure. Come on, play us another one, Olga.
Can you believe her, Olga? Concert pianist at 15, class valedictorian.
Plus, she's won every spelling bee in the whole darn city. Makes me proud to be a Pataki.
Hey, who's taking me to preschool?
Yeah, in a minute, Olga.
No, I'm Helga, Dad. Helga.
Whatever. Go play outside, would you?
I'm going to preschool.
We then see little toddler Helga leaving for school, walking in the rain all by herself. She gets soaking wet from the rain, gets splashed by the mud from a car driving by, and a big mean old dog takes her lunch from her.
So nobody's ever noticed you?
There was someone.
Hi, nice bow. Huh? I like your bow because it's pink like your pants.
In a really sensitive and formative time in Helga's life, Arnold was the only one who seemed to notice her and be nice to her. Later that day at preschool, we see the class sitting at snack time, and Harold sneaks over and he steals Helga's crackers.
Want mine?
Everyone laughs at Helga for her fluttering eyes at Arnold, and she reacts by basically beating up Harold and telling everyone that she's the boss around here. Then, in secret, while no one is watching, she takes a moment to herself talking about how much she loves Arnold and wants to marry him, which is when Brainy shows up and she socks him for the first time.
So I get angry. I already told you that I've got a lame mom, a blowhard dad, and a perfect sister. So they make me mad. Big deal.
So why do you take it out on Arnold?
Why do you keep bringing up Arnold?
Dr. Bliss notes that she has noticed that Helga has a majority of her anger directed at Arnold, though he didn't do anything. Helga gets frustrated that Dr. Bliss keeps bringing up Arnold, and Dr. Bliss responds by saying that if she has something she needs to get off her chest, she's safe to do that.
You're sworn not to tell?
Of course, Helga.
I mean, you're sworn, right? Even if you were tortured, you'd never tell?
I swear never to tell.
You mean, so like, if someone stuck your head in a cage with a starved rabid rat, you still wouldn't tell?
Even then, Helga, I still wouldn't tell.
And that's the exact moment when, for the first time, to anyone other than Phoebe, Helga admits openly that she's head over heels in love with Arnold.
Absolutely, positively in love with the boy! I want to grow up and have a fabulous life traveling around the world with him, coffee in Paris, roses, sailboats, the whole 9 yards! I want to have a perfume named after us, Arnold and Helga! I love Arnold!
after she screams it to the heavens, she tells Dr. Bliss that if she tells anyone, she's gonna rip her tongue out and hang her with it. Dr. Bliss is really proud of Helga for admitting her secret to her, and she tells Helga that it's okay to keep it a secret and that she can tell Arnold whenever she's ready. Helga thinks that she's sick for being obsessed with him and sculpting a likeness of Arnold out of his used gum, but Dr. Bliss explains that she isn't sick and she just feels her feelings very strongly and is very creative.
It's okay to be obsessed about him? You know, the shrines and stuff, the 3 a.m. vigils, the tantric spells.
As long as you're not hurting anyone, it sounds like an okay way to express yourself.
So animal sacrifices are out?
Yes, I'm afraid so.
So it's okay to be Helga? I can go out there and yell and boss the other kids around, right?
Right.
The only thing she really puts a restriction on is the fact that Helga can't hit Brainy anymore because hurting people isn't okay, and that's how she got here in the first place.
The session's over, Helga.
What? Already? But we were just starting to make some progress.
We can talk again.
Helga leaves the session feeling better than ever. She runs into Arnold and the two fall to the ground. Helga almost tells Arnold how she feels, but then she does the normal calling him football head and telling him to watch where he's going routine.
Look at him, all ticked off. He doesn't get it. He doesn't know my secret. What a sap. What a maroon. He still can't even tell that I adore him. Oh, my football-headed love god. I'm okay. You're okay. We're all okay. I love you.
As per usual, Brainy shows up, and for once, instead of socking him, she talks to Brainy and tells him to stop being weird, and the episode ends with her walking into the sunset as some nearby lemons on a stand turn into Arnold's likeness and talk to her. Now, right out the gate, this episode is a very heavy one, and there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, this episode sheds light on the fact that Helga is heavily neglected by her parents, and it gives us some context that this has been happening for as long as Helga can remember. Since she was really young, she's been living in the shadow of her older sister, Olga, and in her parents' eyes, she will never be able to compare to Olga, which, as a result, leaves Helga feeling like she'll never be good enough. We're going to dig a little more into that concept a little later in this video, but that's just a good entry point to understand where the gap between Olga and Helga started in the first place. Moving on, I definitely need to bring up Helga's mother, Miriam. Not only is she really neglectful to Helga and clearly favors Olga, but in this episode and throughout the rest of the series, it's implied subtly that Miriam is an alcoholic. She is constantly saying that she needs a smoothie, acting like she's either drunk or hungover, and falls asleep in random places like a drunk person would. Throughout the series, we would also see Miriam making questionable decisions and behaving in ways that would definitely lead you to believe that she's constantly hammered. I feel like that stems from the fact that Miriam is dissatisfied with her life and her marriage to Big Bob Pataki. Bob is very abrasive and is really self-absorbed and really seems to only care about Olga and his beeper empire. I'm sure that once upon a time he really loved and cared for Miriam, but throughout the series I can't recall a single time that Bob actually showed Miriam any affection. If I had to guess, I'd say that this is probably a big factor in Miriam being an alcoholic. Maybe there's prior history there, maybe she was mistreated by her parents the same way that she does to Helga, who knows, but I'd say for sure that Bob being the way that he is towards her definitely doesn't help whatsoever. Next, I want to talk about Helga's time at preschool. After having the life she had at home, she goes to preschool and for the first time ever feels like someone actually cares about her when Arnold is nice to her. This poor, sad little girl finally gets the feeling that someone in this world really has her best interest at heart, and of all people, it's our kind-hearted and conscientious protagonist, Arnold. But when she, even for a second, shows any interest in him, as we see in that scene where she flutters her eyes at Arnold, everyone laughs at her for liking him, which is the exact moment where we see her develop the character trait of reacting violently towards others to mainly prove that she isn't weak and that she is not to be messed with. It's also the exact moment that Helga learns to hide her feelings towards Arnold out of the fear of judgment. Before this exact moment, she seemed to not hide her feelings towards him, but after she was judged by the others, we see her hide those feelings, which would develop into a huge part of her life. Literally, Helga's biggest story arc in this series is her love for Arnold, which she desperately hides out of fear of judgment and the fear of him not liking her back. And in this episode, we straight up witness the moment that this became a thing and the first time that she hid behind a garbage can to look at a picture of him and reflect on her love for him. I really love this episode for a multitude of reasons. It expanded our understanding of Helga, and it really gave a lot of context as to why she does the things that she does and why she feels the way she feels. This episode really filled a lot of gaps, and it answered a lot of questions that we had about Helga for years now. Overall, I feel like this was the perfect episode to start things off with, as it gives you a good amount of understanding that you'll need to process everything that we're going to discuss over probably the next 1.5, maybe 2 hours, if I had to guess. Up next, we're going to look at an episode that really just kind of hurts. It's a good reflection of the trauma that Helga's been through with her family and how it really damaged her perception of others who have had her best interest at heart. We're looking at the Season 3 episode, Helga and the Nanny. This episode begins with Big Bob coming home in the morning with donuts for everyone and a soda for Helga.
You gotta eat something. Remember, you're starting your community service job down at the animal shelter today.
Bobby, I'm not good in the morning.
Come on, the fresh air will do you good. And Helga, since your mom's gonna be out of the house, I hired a nanny for you.
A nanny? Ha! I don't need a nanny. I can take care of myself.
Baloney, you're only 7.
I'm 9, Dad.
The nanny, whose name is Inga, shows up to watch Helga for the day, and Bob takes off to pick up his lucky belt.
And you must be Helga.
No, she's Helga, and I'm Toulouse-Lautrec.
Inga tells Helga that donuts aren't a healthy breakfast, and she gives Helga some homemade gooseberry jam and pumpernickel bread. Miriam leaves, and Inga tells Helga that they need to get her dressed. Later on at school, we see Helga dressed up similar to Inga, and everyone takes notice, including Arnold.
Wow, Helga. You've got flowers in your hair.
Yeah, you want to make something of it, football head?
No, I was just thinking they look kind of nice.
Later on in the day, we see Helga playing baseball with her friends, and Inga shows up telling her that she should have came home to have a snack and do her homework. Helga refuses to go, but Inga insists and even invites Helga's friends to come over for cake. We then cut to Helga talking to Phoebe on the phone, saying that she thinks Inga is gonna get fired once her dad finds out what Inga's making for dinner. However, we cut to dinner, and it turns out that the food Inga cooked reminds him of food that his Baba used to make for him when he was a young boy, which just makes him love Inga even more.
You haven't asked to be excused, Helga.
Can I be excused, Mom?
Yeah, whatever.
Thanks, Mom. I'm out of here.
You must show respect, Helga. Curtsy for your father.
All hail the Bieber King.
Helga.
The next day, we see Inga serving cake to Helga's friends in the park, and Helga is talking to Phoebe about how much she hates Inga. Phoebe notes that maybe she could learn from Inga, but then this happens.
You're beautiful, you're intelligent, you're the most amazing woman I ever met. That tears it. I don't know why you're so hard on Inga. I'm sure she makes mistakes like everyone else.
Not enough of them.
In Helga's mind, that crossed the line, so Helga plans to basically get Inga in trouble. Helga tries spilling Inga's wood glue, burning the dinner that she's cooking, and even ruining an antique tablecloth by putting it on heavy-duty mode in the washer.
Yes, I seem to have a little rain cloud following me everywhere.
Tough luck. Might as well throw it out.
No, there's always a way to rescue these things.
When none of that works, Helga decides to take it to the next level as she steals Bob's lucky belt and hides it underneath Inga's bed. The next day, we see Bob throwing a fit over the belt.
Say, Dad, isn't it strange? Your belt's never been missing before. Only since Inga started working here.
What are you driving at?
You said you looked everywhere. Did you look in Inga's bedroom?
After finding the belt in Inga's room, Bob fires Inga right there on the spot, and Helga puts on quite the show, complete with crocodile tears.
I trusted you, Nanny Inga.
The only mistake around here was me hiring you, little lady. Now, get your strudel-eating fanny out of my house.
That day, we see Helga at school eating lunch with her friends. Stinky remarks on how good Helga's sandwich looks and how Inga has great presentation. Helga ends up giving Stinky the sandwich and tells everyone about how she got Inga fired today. Everyone looks down on Helga for doing Inga dirty like that. We then cut to Helga's family eating dinner around the table.
Can't eat any more of this.
Now then, clear your plate.
There's no more room in the sink.
You know, I kind of miss old Inga. She had this place running like a Swiss watch. The food was great, my shirts looked brand spanking new, and she always had a smile on her face.
Later that night, Helga has a pretty rough nightmare about Inga.
Hi, Inga. What are you doing in the park?
I'm here every day now. I have nowhere else to go.
You don't have a job?
No one will hire a common thief.
What do you do for food?
I get by. It's mine! Mine, I tell you! Get away, you dirty bird!
We learn that this is a recurring nightmare that Helga's been having, and she decides to resolve it by going to the park tomorrow, telling herself that Inga won't be there, which Helga thinks will make her feel better. But just like in her dream, Inga is there at the park.
Inga, did you find another job?
No, Helga. There is no job in my future.
I can't stand it. I've got to tell you, I know how Dad's lucky belt got under your bed.
We both know, Helga. You put it there to make trouble for me.
Helga tells Inga that she was making her miserable in an attempt to justify her actions.
I got away with it, didn't I?
You're such an angry girl, Helga, and you won't let anyone help you. So you must live with your unhappiness.
A few days after that, we see Helga at home getting the mail. She gets a postcard from Inga, who we learn is back in the Alps, and the episode ends with Helga working on a project that Inga left behind using the stitching technique that Inga taught her. And that's it. This is one of the few episodes I recall of Hey Arnold that didn't have a happy ending whatsoever. But like I said, the episode speaks volumes to Helga's character and how her parents' treatment towards her has really messed her up. Similar to how Arnold showed care for Helga at one point, and she now reacts to him with anger in an attempt to not be seen as weak, and again, out of fear of judgment, Helga now reacts to Inga with the same anger. Finally, she has someone who truly has her best interest at heart, similar to how Arnold did at one point, but Helga feels the need to dismiss Inga's help and she naturally burns that bridge between them. It's kind of like a form of self-sabotage. Helga finally has someone who provides everything that her parents don't. Inga cares about Helga. She makes Helga healthy meals, makes sure she's well taken care of, and overall has Helga's well-being at the forefront of her mind. But Helga, being used to living in an environment of abuse, does everything in her power to get rid of Inga with the rationalization that Inga is, quote, ruining her life. In a way, Inga was indeed ruining her life, but Helga's life is full of neglect and abuse, and Inga was the one to put a stop to that and care for Helga in a way that she's never been before. What Helga perceived as ruining her life was actually an attempt to care for her. Unfortunately, due to the way Helga was raised by her parents, she basically shoots herself in the foot and takes Inga out with her in the process. It's truly sad, and you can't blame her. It's not Helga's fault. She was raised in a specific environment of not being cared for, and to have that change in a quick manner like it did can really be scary for someone who's holding on to the amount of trauma that Helga is. Now, moving on from there, we're going to look a little further at the relationship between Helga and her sister Olga. The relationship that Helga and Olga have is a really complex one, and we're going to go over a few episodes that really showcase this, starting with the Season 1 episode, Olga Comes Home. The episode begins with Miss Lovak talking about how she just got a letter from the best student that she's ever had.
Olga Pataki was and will probably always be the hardest working, most successful and giving alumnus of PS 118. And I know we're all happy to have a direct blood relative of Olga's in our class, Helga Pataki.
Miss Lovak is so obsessed with Olga that she straight up has a little shrine with her likeness in the corner of the classroom and pictures of her on the wall. Helga naturally is really uninterested in the conversation, but Miss Lovak pretty much begs Helga to ask her sister to come visit the class.
Will you, Helga? Will you?
Oh, yes, Miss Slovak. I'll get right on that.
Back at home, Big Bob and Miriam are anxiously awaiting Olga's homecoming. Olga finally shows up, and immediately her parents are fawning over her. Meanwhile, Olga immediately just walks right to Helga to talk to her.
Toodles, Helga. How's my baby sister? You're growing into quite a lovely young lady.
Yeah, I'm a real beauty.
This is a pretty good example of Olga's character and how Helga feels about her. You can tell that Olga clearly cares about Helga and genuinely loves her, but at face value, Helga seems like she can't stand Olga. Given prior established context, it's definitely understandable why Helga would feel this way. We already know the kind of opinion that their parents have of Olga and how it makes Helga feel as a result. Later on at dinner, Olga is telling everyone about her achievements, which leads to her performing a piano piece for everyone after dinner. Later on, we see Helga talking to herself about Olga.
Olga, Olga, Olga. So she's beautiful and brilliant and popular. Big deal. If I hear her name one more time.
Just then, the mail is delivered and Helga picks it up, noticing that Olga got a letter from her college. Helga assumes that it's Olga's grades, so she opens it up and sees that, as expected, Olga got straight A's. Helga says that if she got even one B, she would go ballistic, which gives Helga a sneaky idea.
To change the grades or not to change the grades? That is the question. Whether 'tis more nobler in my mind to suffer a modest, unappreciated life in the shadow of Olga.
Helga is weighing if she wants to continue to live in Olga's shadow or get what she calls sweet black revenge, which she claims is no contest. We see the family sitting at dinner later that night.
And I'm dating one boy who's in pre-law and one boy who's in pre-med. I just can't decide which one I like better.
Oh, I almost forgot, Olga. This letter came for you today.
Oh, goody, my grades. Can you believe I've gotten straight A's since the 3rd grade?
Olga opens up her grades and reads them off for everyone, and she's completely devastated when she gets a B+. Meanwhile, Helga just thinks it's hilarious.
Mother, may I say this soup is exquisite?
Later on, we see Olga laying in bed and crying while listening to opera, while Helga is just enjoying every second of it. Her parents, for once, look at Olga in a different light. They finally see her as something other than the perfect child that they've always known.
B+.
Leave her alone, B. She's depressed.
It's been a whole day. She can't just lay around the house moping like that.
Sure she can. I do.
Bob does everything he can to snap Olga out of it, including buying her a box of chocolates and getting her a nice fancy dress to wear to dinner, but Olga denies his offers while Helga reaps the rewards, eating the chocolates and wearing the dress.
Why, Price LeBlanc, it's you. What's that you say? Ever since you met me at the fraternity mixer, you simply can't get me out of your mind. What? Take me out for mocha lattes?
At school the next day, Helga is talking to Arnold about how she changed Olga's grades, and she's been crying in her room ever since. Arnold notes that Olga must be pretty depressed right now, and he tells her in a disappointed manner that he's always wanted a brother or a sister and how he thought that kind of relationship was really special.
Yeah, well, what do you know? Olga, it's evil. She's a pompous, overbearing, arrogant witch. Only this time, I've got her beat.
Okay. Forget I mentioned it.
Later on, we see Helga at home. She invites her dad to play some checkers with her, and he says no because he's too worried about Olga. Helga ends up going to her mom and asking if they can whip up a batch of smoothies together, and she denies, also saying that she's too worried about how depressed Olga is. Helga is walking up to her room, and she stops in Olga's room on the way and sees how upset Olga is.
Oh, brother. Look at her in there, crying like a baby, feeling all sorry for herself, all because she thinks she got a B+. Well, I guess there's only one thing to do. Much better.
Helga goes to her room and she falls asleep. She has a weird dream that she's walking through a desert filled with melted clocks, and she hears Olga crying in the distance.
I am the angel of reason.
Wonders never cease. How do I get out of here?
You know what you have to do. You must do the right thing.
But what is the right thing?
You know, do the right thing. And now I have to go.
Wait, I have one more question. What's it like to fly?
It's okay.
After the dream of Arnold, Helga walks right into Olga's room and tells her the truth. Helga tells Olga that she didn't get a B+ and that she was just jealous, so she changed the grade. So now Olga can get up and go back to being the golden child and tell mom and dad so they can award her and punish Helga like they always do.
That was a pretty terrible thing to do.
Yeah, what's new? Get on with it. Tell mom and dad.
Well, I could do that. I should do that. But I'm not going to tell them.
Olga surprisingly tells Helga that she isn't gonna do that, and she takes this as a moment to confide in Helga about something that Helga never thought she would hear.
You must think I'm lucky. All the attention I get from them. I have to perform all the time like some kind of wind-up doll. I get really sick of it. You're lucky they don't even notice you.
Really?
Really.
Helga thanks Olga for not telling, and as she's walking away, Olga asks if maybe Helga would want to spend the day with her tomorrow. We see Helga's demeanor change as she simply says,
"Oh, okay, that might be nice."
And that's it for this episode. Like I said, this episode does a fantastic job of showcasing the complexity of the relationship between these two sisters. Olga, as far as we know, has never done anything mean to Helga. This episode is the first time we see Olga in the series, and from what we see here, she's nothing but supportive of Helga and kind to her. However, their parents clearly favor Olga and hold her in high regard in compared to how they look at Helga. Their parents focused so hard on Olga's success that they made Helga literally feel invisible, and as a result, Helga holds a lot of animosity for Olga and resents her. Helga says she feels like Olga is evil and overbearing, when in all reality, from what we can tell, Olga is nothing but nice and supportive towards Helga. As much as Helga seems to be envious of all the attention that Olga gets from everyone, and more importantly, their parents, Olga is also jealous of Helga in the fact that she gets to fly under the radar for the most part. Olga finds it hard to keep up this life of having to perform for everyone and focus so much on getting the best grades possible. This realization helps Helga see Olga in a different light. Not only does Olga acknowledge the fact that their parents don't even notice Helga, but she's also envious of that fact, which opens a really good point for the sisters to connect on. Furthermore, I also need to connect some other dots here. Remember how earlier in this video when I was talking about Helga on the couch and how Helga starts bullying people and being hostile to show that she isn't weak and to help hide her feelings of Arnold? I also think that Helga started that behavior of hostility and bullying as a cry for attention. Helga just wasn't getting attention from their parents like Olga was. Helga wasn't getting attention at school the same way Olga did when she went to PS 118, so in a way, I feel like Helga being a bully and being mean to people is a way for her trying to get attention in any way possible, even if it's negative attention. We also see this represented in Helga on the couch by how bullying and being rude got Helga into counseling in the first place, but by the time she moved past her anger and negativity towards Dr. Bliss, she was able to end the session on a positive note and even gave Dr. Bliss a big old hug. This episode really helped me come to the realization that there is another layer to the onion, so to speak. There's multiple reasons why Helga ended up being the bully that she is. Now we're going to follow up that episode by checking out another episode that delves into the relationship between Helga and Olga, the season 5 episode, Big Sis. This episode begins with Helga riding the bus home one day and drawing.
Stupid, dumb, annoying ways. Why can't she just stay away for good and leave me the heck alone?
Helga?
Arnold?
Is something wrong? You're stabbing at a drawing of your sister with a big red crayon.
Olga's coming home for a 2-week visit and Helga is pissed about it. Helga says that it'll be a nightmare, while Arnold, ever the optimist, says that maybe it'll be different this time. Helga dismisses, saying that things between Olga and her will never change. Helga gets home and sees a big banner welcoming Olga home.
Surprise, Olga!
Welcome home, dear!
It's just the girl.
Darn, he thought you were Olga.
Sorry to disappoint you.
Oh, Mommy! Daddy!
Olga, you're home!
Oh, we missed you so much, honey.
Wait a minute. Where's my baby sister?
Right here, Olga.
Oh, Helga. You're such a silly. Quit hiding behind that door and come give your sister a big old smooch.
Olga announces that she's volunteering her time and talents to the world-renowned Big Sis Little Sis program, where she will act as a surrogate big sister to a single child in need.
Let me get this straight. You're saying that you're gonna be busy this whole entire visit? Being a sister to someone else?
I'm afraid so, Helga.
Well, guess we'll just have to hang out next time you're home.
I guess. Unless you think you might like to spend some time with me and my new little sis.
Wow, sounds great, Olga, but I have to go alphabetize my WrestleMania trading cards for the next 2 weeks.
Okay then, I'll see you at dinner, baby sister.
Helga is stoked that Olga is going to be busy with another kid the whole time, so she won't have to spend any time with her. Later at dinner, Olga calls Helga down, and at the same time, Olga's little sis shows up. Turns out that little sis is Lila, whom Helga has a problem with due to the fact that Lila is Arnold's love interest. As one would expect, Lila and Olga are like 2 peas in a pod. Their personalities are very similar, so they get along well. Meanwhile, Helga is the exact opposite of them.
It's good luck.
gosh, Daddy. A favorite recipe of mine from the faraway land of Azerbaijan? I hope it's not too foreign for you.
Not at all, Olga.
Goody, because I made a Moroccan maraschino tart bake for dessert.
That sounds oh too yummy.
It is. It's positively fantastic.
Oh, I think I'm gonna puke.
Later on, we see Olga and Lila watching a soap opera while crying their eyes out, while Helga sits by very uninterested. After watching the sad soap opera, they go up to Olga's room to dance around to some fun music, paint their toenails, and have a tickle fight. Passing by, Helga overhears their conversation.
I'm oh so certain that I just love having a big sis.
And I'm certain that I just love having a little sis, Lila, especially one as perfect as you.
The next day, we see Helga on the bus trying to shoot spitballs at Lila when she accidentally hits Arnold. She talks to Arnold about how Lila's been spending time with Olga and how she's annoyed by it.
Shouldn't you be happy that Olga's hanging around with someone else besides you for a change?
Well, I am happy, football head. It's just that it's Lila, and I don't know, she and Olga are just driving me nuts, that's all.
Helga, if I didn't know better, I might think you were a little jealous.
Jealous? I'm not jealous, Arnold.
Arnold suggests that Helga should tell Olga about how she's feeling, but instead, Helga says that she's going to handle the situation in her own way. Helga steals their tickets to the opera, but a nice old lady there offers them free tickets. She takes the oil out of Olga's car, which causes it to break down, but a nice farmer comes to the rescue and even offers them a nice hearty breakfast with his family. Then she loosens the bolts on a horse-drawn carriage that they're going to ride on. When the carriage falls apart, the horse freaks out and takes Olga and Lila on a wild ride, but thankfully Lila grew up on a farm and knows a lot about horse training.
You saved my life! Oh, I just love you so much!
Helga is nearby watching, and Arnold comes up out of nowhere to confront Helga about what she's doing. He tells her that either she is straight up crazy or extremely jealous.
Arnold, how many times do I have to tell you? I am not jealous.
If you're really not jealous, then why don't you just leave Olga and Lila alone?
Later on at home, Helga is in the kitchen and she sees a cake that Olga made that has a picture of Olga and Lila on it. She sits down in the living room and sees a framed picture of Olga and Lila. Then Helga lays down in her room listening to the radio.
And coming up next, my darling little sis, a dedication from Helga Pataki to her favorite little sis, Lila.
Helga finally decides that she can't take it anymore. She goes right into Olga's room to finally admit to her about how she's feeling.
You see, I've been thinking, and no matter how much I hate to admit it, when I see you and Lila together, I get kinda, well, I get kinda jealous.
Jealous? Whatever are you jealous about?
Look, Olga, even though we may not always get along, even though we're not very close, and even though most of the time you bug the living heck out of me, you're still my big sister, and I just don't like sharing you with somebody else.
Olga reassures Helga that no matter what she thinks, she has nothing to be jealous of. She says that even though Lila is her little sis, she will never be her baby sister. She tells Helga that even though they have a lot in common, her and Lila will never have the same kind of bond that she has with Helga. By the end of the conversation, Olga convinces Helga to put on her best sailing outfit and to go out on the creek to sail with her and Lila.
We were sailing along on Moonlight Bay. We could hear the voices sing.
What was I thinking?
They seem to say, you've stolen my heart and gone away. As we sing our moonlit song on Moonlight Bay, on Moonlight Bay.
As viewers, this episode did something weird to our perception of Olga and Helga's relationship. It added yet another layer of complexity. In the last episode we discussed, we had a moment at the end where Helga and Olga could get along on the basis that Olga acknowledged Helga's struggle and Helga acknowledged Olga's struggle. In this episode, it began as usual with Helga being against Olga, and of course, Olga being nothing but kind and supportive to Helga. Helga tried her best to keep up the angry and resentful shtick until she just couldn't handle it anymore. She finally came to the realization that she's actually jealous and really does care for Olga somewhere deep down inside. Helga has a complex history of covering her true feelings up with anger and negativity. This episode was a good turning point for us to realize how much Helga really does care for Olga. In this episode though, Helga's resentment towards Olga isn't so much portrayed as her being jealous over how her parents treat her, it's more portrayed as the fact that Helga just finds Olga annoying in general. However, We all know based on previous context that the resentment towards Olga directly stems from her parents and how they hold Olga on a pedestal while they really seem to not care about Helga pretty blatantly. Now we're going to look a little further into Olga and Helga's relationship with the episode Olga Gets Engaged. This episode begins with Mr. Simmons' class getting out of session.
I heard your sister Olga's coming home from college this week. She's so great. She's pretty and popular, and she's a fabulous dresser.
Not to mention an award-winning scholar.
And she's so nice and friendly. You must love having her as a sister. Oh yeah, I just love Olga.
Back at home, Helga and her parents are listening to Olga talk about all the amazing achievements that she's accomplished recently. Then Olga drops a massive, unexpected bomb on them.
I saved the best news for last. I've met a wonderful boy and I'm dropping out of school to marry him and move to the big city.
What is this, some kind of joke?
No, Daddy. Doug's the best thing that's ever happened to me. He's handsome and dreamy, and he's a fabulous actor. Of course, he's not famous yet, so I'll get a job and support us both. But isn't it romantic?
No, you're throwing your life away.
Olga, don't make the same mistake I made.
Gee, Olga.
While their parents are extremely disappointed, Helga runs up to Olga seeming to be very excited, but her smile proves that her excitement is insincere. Later on at dinner, we see Olga's fiancé there talking to her parents about how much Olga means to her.
She knows my deepest torments and my darkest fears. She's my angel, my soulmate, my shining light.
This guy's all hat and no cattle.
Olga tells them that they met 3 weeks ago, and Bob questions the rush to get married, while Olga is really hurt by their lack of support. Helga decides to play devil's advocate, and she chimes up in support of Olga's decision, but yet again, her support is very insincere.
If I play my cards right, I can get rid of Olga for good.
Later on, we see Helga talking to Olga about the situation, and she tries to convince Olga to sneak off, run away, and marry her fiancé.
I feel like we're truly bonding at last. I just don't know how to think.
Don't mention it. Oh, boy.
As Helga is working on sneaking past with a ladder to help Olga sneak out, Olga's fiancé is in the middle of buttering up Big Bob.
So you played left tackle for Green Bay, huh?
Yeah, they're the toughest, strongest guys around. Next to retail salesmen.
Salesman? Oh, come on, you're just greasing my chassis.
Helga overwatches as Doug, Olga's fiancé, finally wins over Big Bob. We then see Helga climbing up a ladder to Olga's room, and on the way up, she spies Doug now trying to butter up Miriam in the kitchen.
Olga, darling, oh, it's you, Mrs. Pataki. Goodness, you look so young. I must confess, for a moment, I could have sworn you were my beloved Olga.
Oh, that's very, very sweet, Douglas, but it is not true.
Oh, yes, it is. The only difference between you is that you have the powerful shoulders of, obviously, a natural athlete.
While Doug is talking to Miriam, Bob comes into the kitchen to get Doug back to watch more football.
Oh, that bee and his football.
I never really understood football, Miriam. Such a coarse game.
Doug was straight up just talking to Bob about how much he loves football and how he used to play for Green Bay, but then he went on to say that to Miriam, which thankfully Helga saw and perceived as a massive red flag.
Man, this guy's a total liar. If Olga marries him, her life will be ruined. Perfect.
Helga runs right upstairs to tell Olga all about how Doug won their parents over, so now she doesn't need to run away. Olga is ecstatic about that, as is Helga. Days later, we see Doug at the park talking to a bunch of kids.
I had no idea Doug used to be a professional race car driver.
Wise up, Arnold. The guy's a fake.
A fake?
He's been lying about all the stuff he's done ever since he got here, and he's planning on living off Olga and my dad.
Really? And your sister still wants to marry him?
She doesn't know anything about it.
Arnold tells Helga that if Doug really is as bad as she says he is, then Helga needs to do something about it. As per usual, Helga dismisses Arnold's advice. We cut to dinner at the Pataki house, where we see Doug reciting Shakespeare, and Helga starts spacing off and has a daydream about Olga's life with Doug. In the daydream, we see Doug claiming that he's been accepted into the astronaut program, and Olga is left at home to care for the kids and do all the dirty housework, which makes her miserable.
Suck it up, Olga. You ruined your life, and now you have to live with it.
Why aren't you smart like Helga? She's brilliant.
She is smart.
And you
Back in the real world, we fast forward to the day of the wedding, and Helga's hanging out with Olga as she's getting her dress on and making sure she's ready. Things are going great, but it takes a pretty dark turn when Olga starts crying happy tears, and she thanks Helga for making it all possible.
It was important to me that Mom and Dad liked Doug, but it meant the most to me that you liked them. I've never told you, but I always thought you were really wise when it comes to judging people.
Really?
Olga gets down to her level and tells her that even though they haven't always been close, she is so glad that Helga is her sister and she couldn't ask for a better one. This, of course, makes Helga feel extremely guilty, and she storms out of Olga's room frustrated.
Oh, sweetheart, I can't make it this weekend. I'm hosting a conference with the mayor on the homeless problem. But how about next week? We'll go skiing. I miss you too, Linda. Bye.
Hello, Doug.
Oh, hi, Helga. I was just talking to my cousin. Sweet kid. I recently saved her life in a flood.
All right, buddy. The jig's up.
Jig? I don't know what you mean. Is this some kind of a game?
It may be a game to you, and for a while it was to me, but now the game's over.
Helga tells Doug about all the lies that she's caught him telling, and she tells him that he needs to leave right now or else she will out Doug to everyone.
And whatever you say, bucko, I'll just deny it. They won't believe you.
How do you know?
Because you're jealous of Olga. Everybody knows it. She's prettier than you, she's successful, and guess what? She's popular.
Doug reveals that he plans to marry Olga for a cushy ride on the beeper business that Bob promised to pass down to him, as he sees Doug as the son he always wanted. Helga then gets Doug cornered by threatening to redial the woman that Doug was just talking to and telling her everything.
Why are you doing this? You don't even like Olga.
When your sister's in trouble, you're supposed to do something about it. It doesn't matter if you like her or not. You're supposed to do something about it.
Doug finally caves, and he admits that he did like Olga, even if he didn't really love her, as he walks out the door without a word said to anyone other than Helga. Helga says that she'll tie up loose ends for Doug.
I've been called away to help solve the crisis in Namibia. Oh, Mommy, Daddy, he's leaving. It would be selfish and unfair of me to ask you to marry me under these tragic conditions. I hope you know that my love for you is eternal. Yours, always, Doug.
Olga is obviously heartbroken by the fact that Doug left, but she also continues to hold him in high regard for the context of which she believes Doug left, and as Olga continues to weep, the episode ends. Now, this one is a really interesting one to unpack. Helga had the perfect opportunity to get Olga right where she wanted her. Olga would have moved away with this hack of a con artist and been left to pull the weight of the family far away from everyone else. It would have been the end of Olga's long list of achievements that's left Helga feeling like she's always living in her sister's shadow. However, when push came to shove, we see Helga break down that proverbial wall of anger and resentment and actually do the right thing. This episode again showed us that deep down inside, Helga really does care about Olga. She may struggle to show it, and she begrudgingly does the right thing when the time comes. However, when it really comes down to it, we've constantly seen that Helga ends up being there for Olga. On one hand, I feel bad for Helga because of how she feels, of course. She often gets overlooked by her parents because of their interest in Olga. She feels like Olga's been rubbing her achievements in her face and that she's evil and overbearing, but somewhere deep down inside, she really cares about Olga. Now, Olga, on the other hand, is just doing her best in life and just wants Helga to succeed in life just as much as she herself does. However, Helga, time and time again, is more often than not a really terrible sister to Olga. It's really sad, all things considered, but again, we need to keep in mind that Helga doesn't feel that way about Olga and treat her the way she does because of anything Olga does. She does it because of how her parents are towards her. Deep down at the core of the issue here, it's not about Helga and it's not about Olga, it's about Bob and Miriam and how they fail as parents to make their children feel like they're loved equally. With that being added into the mix combined with prior context established, we can't help but feel empathy for both Helga and Olga for the position that they were put in by their parents. Now, on the note of Helga's parents, we're going to look just a little bit further into the relationship between Helga and her parents by starting off with the Season 2 episode, Quantity Time. This episode begins with Mr. Simmons' class getting out again. Arnold, being the sweet guy that he is, asks Helga what she's going to do during spring break.
I'm gonna have a truly perfect vacation, topped off by the greatest event of the year.
Slam Jam 5, a wrestling match?
Tickets have been sold out for months, but I'll be there.
Sounds great, Helga.
Later on, we see Helga eating dinner with her parents, and I can't help but notice that Bob and Helga eat almost exactly the same. Helga ends up telling her parents that she has a week off for spring break, and Bob says that he also took a week off of work because he's been working so hard.
You're taking off this week too?
All week. And I got plans. I made a list, Miriam, a list of things I need you to do for me this week.
So, you'll both be home?
I'm gonna need you to pick me up some wide white belts, and I need some new socket wrenches.
I'm going to bed, Bob.
Grass in the back is looking pretty shabby.
Later on, we see Helga in bed talking on the phone with Phoebe, demanding that Phoebe get tickets to the wrestling match, even if she needs to stand in the line all night. After that, we cut to Helga sitting in the living room watching TV with Big Bob when Miriam walks in to tell them that she's leaving for the week to go take care of her sick mother. Both Helga and Bob are extremely bothered by the idea of being stuck with each other for an entire week.
What am I gonna do with the girl all week?
Maybe you'll have a chance to bond with Helga like you have with Olga.
Bond with Helga?
Spend some quality time together, something like that. So I gotta go.
We then cut to 2 days later, and Helga's talking to Phoebe about how she spent no time with Bob during her time off. Just then, Bob walks in, angry about the lack of groceries in the house, as both him and Helga refuse to go shopping. Later on, we cut to Helga and Bob both at the grocery store doing the shopping together.
I don't eat any of that stuff. Dad, what's the matter with you? Are you trying to kill me?
Pipe down. You are out of control.
I'm allergic to strawberries. They give me hives. And I don't need any of this junk. Pork rinds, smoked mackerel, pig's feet. Yuck!
Hey, hey, hey! How am I supposed to know you don't eat pig's feet?
You don't know anything about me, Dad.
You're a kid. What's there to know?
Later on, we see Helga talking to her mom on the phone, complaining about how Bob isn't taking good care of her. But then Bob comes up and takes the phone from her.
Oh, holy cow. How many times are you gonna say it? We'll do that quantity time thing tomorrow. I'll spend the whole lousy day with the kid.
Not if I have anything to do with it, Bob.
The next day, we see Helga playing some baseball with her friends when Bob drives up to them.
Hey, Helga, say goodbye to your little friends and hop in.
Dad, what are you doing here?
Come on, we gotta spend the whole day together. Some real quantity time father-daughter stuff. I got it all planned out.
Dad, I'm busy here. Go away.
Time's a-wasting. Let's get this over with.
Helga doesn't want to go, but her dad insists. We see Helga going with her dad while he gets a haircut, while he shops for big white belts at the big and tall store, and basically doing nothing that Helga wants to do. Helga finally steps up and says that she doesn't want to do anything else with Bob.
I'm not going to the hardware store, Dad, and I'm not doing any more of your inane errands with you. You think that spending quantity time with someone means just doing stuff that you want to do. Why don't you just pull over here and drop me off? Oh, and if anyone asks, we bonded. And it was great.
Oh, put a lid on it, Helga. I know what you need.
Bob suggests that Helga needs some fresh air to calm down as he takes her to a little pen with ponies for kids to ride.
Come on, you love this.
I loved it when I was 5.
Well, how old are you now? 7? 8?
9, Dad.
9? When the heck did you turn 9?
Last year, doy.
While Helga is embarrassingly riding the horse, Arnold and his grandpa walk up, and she's embarrassed even further when she falls off the horse. Back at home, Helga is full-blown pissed at Big Bob. She tells him to leave her alone as she calls Phoebe about the tickets.
Phoebe, did you get them?
I couldn't get the tickets.
Ow! What a rotten week! First Miriam bails on me because she can't take it, and then my lame dad forces me to spend the whole day with him so he can pretend that we're bonding. What a joke.
I'm terribly sorry, Helga.
And now, I can't even get tickets to the one thing I've been dying to see.
Bob walks away feeling bad. We see him later at night as he reflects on some family photos of Helga.
Look at her. She looks miserable. I gotta think of something I can do for her. I just need some kind of clue.
Bob takes the flyer for the wrestling event, and the next morning we see him waking up Helga and begging her for one more chance to spend quality time with her. She begrudgingly agrees, and he tells her to get dressed.
Good. Now hurry up and get dressed or we'll be late.
Late for what?
I've been up all morning calling all over town. I must have called in 50 favors, but I got 'em. And the two of us are going.
Going where?
I got the tickets you wanted, Helga.
You got tickets to...
Not another word. Get dressed or we'll be late.
We cut to Bob pulling up with Helga, but they pass the stadium where the wrestling match is happening.
Rats. The musical of singing rats.
Pretty good, huh? I did a little research about you. Found this magazine ad that you clipped out. And then the old noggin started working.
Gee, Dad, this really is a surprise. Thanks.
Told you I'd come through.
Helga thinks to herself, great, now I have to sit through this stupid musical for 3 hours. Meanwhile, Bob is thinking word for word literally the same thing, which presents them with a great opportunity to bond over their hatred of this musical.
So beautiful. And so true.
This is the stupidest thing I've ever seen.
I know. It's horrible.
Finally, we've got something we can hate together. Pipe down, you weasels.
This episode is one that really does an interesting thing to our perception of the relationship between Helga and her parents and the overall family dynamic at the Pataki house. First of all, a common theme we see throughout the episode is how much Helga is just like her dad. They eat the same, they sit the same, they watch the same things on TV, and by the end, we learn that they can find common ground in what they find funny or stupid. You'd think that maybe they would have a better relationship based on how alike they are. However, Bob seems to hold the value of his children in regard to what they've achieved and how successful they are. Bob fails to see value in Helga because she isn't winning trophies every day, writing musical scores, or basically doing any of the things that Olga does. Throughout this episode, we also learn how much Miriam seems to resent both Bob and Helga. She learns that they're both going to be staying home for a week, and of course she does everything she can to arrange a way for her to not be there for that entire week. The idea of being stuck at home with Bob and Helga at the same time is so awful to Miriam that she literally just straight up leaves. As you could guess, I'm sure if it were Olga at home, on the other hand, Miriam wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Also, when it comes down to Bob and Helga learning that they are going to be stuck at home with each other, they were both really upset about it. They both had that panic response of, oh god, what am I going to do stuck at home with this person for a whole week? Of course, things got rocky, as you would have expected. However, we see a really interesting thing happen after Bob overhears Helga talking to Phoebe on the phone. He takes a moment to sit by himself and actually pay attention to Helga's struggles for once. He goes through pictures in their photo album and he realizes that Helga is miserable in literally every single picture. We're not sure if he realizes that he gets her name wrong all the time, can't remember how old she is, and knows literally nothing about her. However, we do know that he realizes that he failed to relate to Helga in any way or spend proper time with her by doing something that they mutually want to do. This is kind of a big step for someone as dumb and close-minded as Big Bob. He generally lacks emotions other than anger, happiness, and his standard baseline apathy. But this kind of felt like a big breakthrough. For once, he genuinely thought about Helga and tried to see the world from her perspective. He may have bought the wrong tickets, but at the core of the matter, it's the thought that counts. At least Big Bob made a slight attempt at doing something nice for Helga for once. Of course, it doesn't erase the years of emotional abuse and damage that he caused, but to give him the benefit of the doubt, it's a start. Now we're going to peel back the next layer of the onion just a little more and take another peek at the relationship between Bob and Helga with the Season 1 episode, Spelling Bee. This throwback episode begins with Arnold and Helga standing in front of the class competing in a spelling bee. It's decided that Helga and Arnold are the best spellers in class, so they will be competing in a citywide spelling bee with a cash prize. Helga seems pretty cocky that she's gonna win.
Good luck tomorrow, Helga.
Yeah, right. Just get ready to lose your butt.
Arnold talks to Gerald on the way home, and he doesn't seem too confident in his ability, saying that he thinks Helga is gonna cream him. However, he does have his eyes on the prize with hopes to buy a new keyboard.
Tone Master 2000. 5 octaves, 800 megabytes of music storage, and over 250 pre-programmed instruments. It's only $499.95.
Just saying 800 megabytes of storage was a lot in the 90s. Now, this gives Arnold a fresh breath of confidence, thinking that he will for sure win. Meanwhile, Helga is struggling. She's struggling because if she wins, she'll be making Arnold upset, which she doesn't want to do to him because she loves him. But if she loses, then she loses, and Helga doesn't like to lose. We cut to Helga's house where we see Big Bob Pataki watching his own commercial.
Ding, ding, ding! Big Bob's Beepers!
I'm Big Bob Pataki, the beeper king. Remember, we'll beat any advertised price unless it's lower. Come on down to our Beeper Emporium this Saturday for our annual spelling bee sale. If my daughter Helga doesn't win the contest, you get your first beeper free. And remember,
Big Bob's Beepers!
Knowing that he has beepers on the line if Helga loses this thing, he has her studying non-stop to win.
Please, Dad. I'm so tired.
Hey. Your sister Olga could spell that word when she was 5. And what are you now, 6, 7?
9, Dad.
Whatever. Point is, you're a Pataki, and Patakis are winners, right?
Yes, Dad.
Bob starts talking about the first time Olga won the citywide spelling bee. Olga, of course, has an entire wall of trophies, and her winning that spelling bee is one of Bob's favorite memories.
I'll never forget when she got that final word. Qualm. 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 The L was practically silent, but she nailed it. She nailed that L.
Helga, of course, seems miserable studying so hard with her dad. Bob goes around literally forcing Helga to look at every single trophy in the room, and he tells her that he saved a single space for her right behind a tiny trophy.
See it?
Sorta.
Well, it's there. And all you gotta do is win. You hear me? Win. Win! Win!
Helga and Arnold separately spend pretty much the whole night practicing for the spelling bee. Arnold confides in Grandpa Phil, telling him that he isn't sure that he can actually win this spelling bee. Grandpa reinforces him.
You know your grandma and me will be proud of you no matter how good you do. You don't have to prove anything to us.
I know.
You're just as smart as any kid there. The only thing that can beat you is your attitude.
Here, ask me a word, any word.
Okay, here's one. Onomatopoeia. Like I said, Arnold, we'll be proud of you no matter what.
The next day, we see Arnold arrive at the spelling bee, happy to be there, and happy that Gerald showed up to support him. Meanwhile, Helga is backstage feeling upset because of the pressure from her dad.
Now remember, Pumpkin, all these other kids have studied and worked real hard, day and night, just to get this far. But they're all suckers and saps. That trophy belongs to us.
The spelling bee commences, and Bob is confident that this is going to be a cakewalk for Helga. Kids are dropping out left and right until it's just Arnold, Helga, and one other kid left.
That's it. Time for a little insurance policy.
It's discovered that one kid there is cheating when an earpiece falls out of his ear, leaving just Arnold and Helga left. Just then, Bob calls Arnold over to him.
A lot of big words out there. Be pretty easy to mess one up.
Huh?
Well, suppose you missed your next word, but somebody paid you the prize money anyway.
You mean like lose on purpose?
Oh, it's not like that. It's more like just making sure that the kid who's the best speller really wins.
Bob literally hands Arnold a check right then and there in an effort to make him lose, but Arnold decides that he wants none of it as he continues to slay in that spelling bee, much to Bob's dismay. Helga stops and sees the check that Bob gave Arnold.
I can't believe it. He didn't think I could do it on my own.
The next word comes up, and of course, the word is the one that was in the Olga story that Helga has heard a million times.
She's heard that story a million times. She's got it. She's got it.
Of course, after seeing the check from Bob, Helga decides to botch the word on purpose just to spite him. The episode ends with Bob scalding Helga as a huge group of people outside is heckling Bob for free beepers.
Look, it's Big Bob!
His kid lost!
We want beepers!
You know, Dad, I think you're gonna need this for good luck.
We want beepers!
It was a joke! Didn't you see the disclaimer?
By the end of the episode, Helga is straight up dancing from happiness that she's free of her dad's unrealistic expectations. This one really kind of mixes up the signals that we've received from Big Bob. Throughout most of the series, we see Bob treating Helga pretty much like dirt, and this episode is no exception, except this time, Bob actually has faith in Helga. He realizes that Helga is actually really smart, and she has great potential to achieve a win that's on the same caliber as Olga. However, Bob clearly didn't have as much faith in her as he should have. Helga obviously had that in the bag, but Bob didn't think that she could follow through, so he felt the need to bribe Arnold to throw in the towel. It's frustrating on multiple levels because for once, Bob seemed to have some faith in Helga, but he just had to put winning above all else. Again, this episode is really early on in the series, so there is a chance that this could have been the precursor to how Bob would end up treating Helga throughout the rest of the series. I will say though, this episode is truly a shining example of how smart Helga is. We know that she's educated in art and is great with words, but in this episode we really see her book smarts shine through as she's a really capable speller for a 9-year-old. I feel like this is a good one to end on as far as Helga's relationship with her dad goes. It's an example of Bob's values as a parent. Parenting isn't about raising a good kid for Bob, it's about raising a winner, which is hard for Helga. Bob sets this unrealistic expectation upon Helga, which in turn leads her to not want to win just to spite her father. All in all, it can be said that Helga's feeling towards her parents are relatively straightforward, but the reasons as to why she feels that way are really complex, and there's a lot of layers and deep-rooted trauma that made her feel the way she does. Next up, we're actually going to look at an episode that explores the relationship between Helga and her mom, Miriam. That's going to be the season 4 episode, The Beeper Queen. The beginning of this episode would see Miriam struggling to find a bottle of hot sauce on the top shelf of the cabinet in the kitchen. She asks Helga for help, but Helga says she can't because she's making her lunch.
Why, Helga? It's not lunchtime.
It's tomorrow's lunch, Miriam. And if I don't make it, no one else is gonna make it for me. Simon, what the heck is wrong with you?
Then we see Big Bob come into the kitchen to save the day.
Move aside and let a man show you how it's done. My back!
Bob ends up laying on the couch with ice on his back, saying that he'll probably be out of work for a few weeks while he's healing. He says he can run the Beeper Empire from right here on the couch.
I mean, it's not like I've got any big meetings coming up or anything. Oh, criminy, I totally forgot! Bubniak and Krapowski are flying in from Buffalo to close a major deal! Oh, and it's too late to cancel. I'm gonna have to get someone to take my place.
Bob says that he'll need to find someone to send in his place, and he asks Helga if she has anything going on tomorrow. Of course, she says she has to go to school, so she can't.
Well, I'm free tomorrow, B.
You go to the meeting? That has got to be the stupidest idea I've ever heard.
The girl is right, Miriam. I mean, these guys are heavy hitters. They're sharks. They'd eat you alive.
Now listen, you two. I think that you ought to give me a little more credit because I can do this. I can take a meeting as good as the next guy.
Feeling like he has no other choice, Bob agrees to let Miriam go to the meeting for him on the basis that she just gets them to sign the papers and then comes straight home. We then cut to the next day while Helga and Bob are waiting for Miriam to come back, hours after the meeting should have ended. Miriam finally comes home and Bob demands that she tell him about how the meeting went.
First, we shared a nice lunch of pizza and wings, and then we went to the pastry palace for coffee and those yummy little donut hole thingies that I love so much.
Faster, Miriam!
I'm right. Okay, then I guess Jim and Hank signed the papers and tripled their order of beepers. Wasn't that sweet of them?
Both Bob and Helga are impressed with Miriam's work, and she explains that the businessmen she had the meeting with decided to stay an extra day, and that Miriam's going to show them their cell phone selection tomorrow. The next day, we see Miriam as she's heading out to meet with them.
Miriam? What in the heck happened to you?
Nothing happened, B. I just wanted to look more professional, you know.
Miriam says bye to Bob and even gives Helga a ride to school.
Bye! Thanks for the ride!
Hey, Helga, was that your mom?
As a matter of fact, Arnaldo, it was.
When did she get her license back?
Well, technically she hasn't, but she has to get to work. See, she's filling in for my dad at the Beeper Emporium, and she wanted to give me a lift to school. Pretty boss, huh?
We see Miriam at work in Bob's giant mess of an office as she answers the phone to help a customer. Meanwhile, at school, Helga's eating lunch with Phoebe, who is impressed by how well Miriam made Helga's lunch. Later that day, Helga gets home and goes to find her mom, who's in her room working still, and she tells Helga all about how she loves working and how it's made her feel like a whole new person. Helga says that she's gonna leave to do her homework.
Wait, Helga? Why don't you just do your homework in here with me?
Okay, I'll go get my stuff.
Okay.
Then we get a nice little montage that starts with Helga getting a ride from her mom, eating a healthy lunch, and spending plenty of time with her, but it pretty quickly turns sour as we see Helga's mom get more and more busy. She starts ignoring Helga for her cell phone and packing very lackluster one-item lunches for her. We see Helga go to her mom's room to talk to her, but Miriam is too busy talking on the phone and planning a commercial shoot for Bob's Beepers to give Helga the time of day.
Hey, Mom, I'm ready to go.
At school that day, Helga realizes that Miriam completely forgot to pack her lunch. She goes home and ends up trying to call Miriam at work, but she's far too busy to talk to her. Meanwhile, Bob is constantly just passed out on the couch. Helga feels lonelier than ever before.
Are you okay? Huh? Well, you seem kind of distracted. Plus your ice cream is melting all over your hand.
Yeah, well, I was thinking.
Helga confides in Arnold, telling him that she's trying to figure out a way to tell Miriam that even though she's great at working and she loves it, she needs to stop and come home because Helga needs her. We then cut to Miriam on the commercial shoot as they wrap up their take. Helga approaches her.
Helga, what on earth are you doing here?
I need you for a minute, Mom. I need to talk to you.
You need me for a minute, Mom. Well, listen, I am sorry, Helga, but this is just not a good time. I mean, we're going to be back on in 5 minutes, and they need me. So whatever it is, it's just going to have to wait until later, okay? So go on, bye-bye. Go do your homework or something.
After that exchange, Miriam asks the director to play back that last take, but instead, he plays a recording of exactly what Miriam just said to Helga. Just like that, Miriam drops the cup of coffee that she's drinking and leaves immediately to go find her.
I realized I've been so preoccupied at work that I haven't had time for you, and so I've decided to quit and come back home.
Helga tries to tell her that she can't just give up all this, and Miriam insists, saying that she can get a job whenever, but Helga is only going to be young once. They both go home, and the episode ends with Miriam sending Bob off to work, though he really doesn't want to go. Now, honestly, there's a lot that we can get out of this episode. Overall, the big implication here is that Miriam finally gets sober and getting a job helps her find herself again. At one point, we hear Arnold asking Helga if her mom got her license back, which definitely isn't clear-cut, but kind of alludes to the idea that Miriam got her license taken away for getting a DUI. This is another episode that really just kind of hurts. We finally see Miriam become the mother that Helga has always wanted her to be. She spends time with Helga, she takes care of Helga, she even acts like a good influence for Helga. However, she let the entire gig overtake her whole life, and Helga ends up being put on the back burner, which, oddly enough, left Helga feeling lonelier than she did before when Miriam didn't take care for her and just stayed at home getting hammered all day. This one really messed with my perception of Miriam. We finally learn that deep down inside of her is someone who can be a fantastic parent and take care of Helga the way she deserves to be taken care of. And for once, Helga didn't shoot herself in the foot and self-sabotage it. It's just sad though, because it's not the kind of thing that Miriam could maintain. Watching this as a kid, part of me really hoped that things would change for Helga from this point on. It would have been really cool to see Miriam turn into a better parent after this episode, but it didn't stick. Miriam would go back to her old ways and be the same person she was before, which is just sad. Back in the start of this video, in Helga on the Couch, we learned that Miriam has basically always treated Helga this same way. It's sad that it took 9 years for Miriam to finally step up and be the parent that Helga deserves, and it really hurts to think that the relationship she had with Helga in this episode was unable to be maintained. Now we're going to shift gears in a direction that looks a little more on Helga's reflection of herself. First off, we're going to check out the Season 1 episode, Helga's Makeover. This episode begins with Rhonda going around class and handing out party invitations to every girl except for Helga.
I wonder why Helga's not invited to Rhonda's party. Well, it is a girl party. Helga's a girl. She is. Oh yeah, I always forget.
Later on, we see Helga at the store with Phoebe. Phoebe says that she's thinking about going to Rhonda's party, while Helga shows an extreme amount of disinterest, playing it off as her being happy that she wasn't invited.
No, go to Rhonda's party and have your little makeovers. It's no snot out of my nose.
We then cut to all the boys in the neighborhood playing baseball when Helga joins them out of nowhere. Harold chimes up and says that the game is boys only because Rhonda is having a girls only slumber party.
Hey, wait a minute. How come you're not at the slumber party? Oh yeah, I forgot. You weren't invited because you're not girl enough.
Shut up!
That's not true. I was invited, I just didn't want to go.
Helga's not a girl.
Helga ends up chasing down Harold and beating him up for making fun of her. Then Helga ends up walking down the street angry about being told that she isn't a girl.
I am too a girl. I'm pretty. I'm feminine. I'm delicate.
Oh, excuse me, young man.
I'm a girl!
Later, we see Helga walking up to Rhonda's house and peeking through the window as she sees the girls laughing while Rhonda is talking bad about Helga.
And then Helga goes, I ought to deck you, fat boy. I don't sound like that. I ought to deck them all. Out of my way, geek face.
A two, Phoebe?
Even Phoebe ends up laughing at Helga's expense, which hits Helga right where it hurts. Helga decides that she's gonna show them just how feminine she can be. She goes to the store and grabs some magazines, one of which is Preteen Miss.
Yo, Yolanda! How much for this copy of Preteen Miss?
Preteen Miss?
Yeah, Preteen Miss. You know, the one with the feature on how to make ugly girls pretty.
How did that get in there? Oh, well, I might as well take it. I can probably use it to line my birdcage with. Yeah, that's it.
Helga runs straight home and goes to the bathroom to give herself a makeover. Helga puts on makeup, does her nails, plucks her eyebrows, and changes her hair. After she's done, Helga is nearly unrecognizable.
Your father needs to use the bathroom now.
Okay. There. Satisfied?
Oh, my.
Maybe I should have gone a bit lighter on the eyeshadow.
Later, we see Sid riding up to the other boys on his bike, saying that he just saw Helga and that she's all dolled up like a girl. The boys decide that they're going to Rhonda's house to crash her slumber party. Meanwhile, Helga arrives at Rhonda's slumber party looking and acting completely different.
Helga? Rhonda, darling, great to see ya. Sorry I'm late.
Helga walks in and makes herself at home, being the center of attention. She even brought some makeup to give the other girls some tips.
I'd say you're really more of a coral.
Helga, can I talk to you for a minute?
Not now, dear. Oh, yes, Nadine, you're definitely a coral.
Meanwhile, the boys are getting all Rambo'd up to go crash a slumber party. We see the girls around the table getting ready to do facials when Phoebe pulls Helga away to talk to her.
Helga, what are you doing?
Getting a facial.
You never used to like this girly stuff.
That's the old Helga. The new Helga can be just as beautiful as the next girl.
Yeah, well, I like the old Helga better. At least she was honest. She'd never pretend to like all this stuff just to fit in with the crowd.
Helga tells Phoebe that she's just jealous because she's more feminine and pretty. Helga walks back into the kitchen and sees that everyone has already applied facials.
Okay, Helga, you're next. Gee, I am.
At the last second, before they apply the facial to Helga, she bats it away.
This is stupid! That's what's wrong!
But Helga, this mask will help reduce wrinkles and signs of aging.
We don't have wrinkles! Ugh! We don't have signs of aging! We're 9 years old!
While all of this is going on, the boys are outside planning to scare the heck out of the girls. From inside, the girls hear a crash outside, so they go to investigate, and this happens. All of the boys run away, but the girls end up catching Harold, who tripped, as they force him back into the house, tie him up, and give him a makeover.
A coral pink.
Help! Let me go! Let me go!
Now this is what I call a good party.
You said it, Helga.
This episode is a weird one to dissect. On the whole, it's portrayed as lighthearted and in a joking manner, but behind that humor is a subcontext with a bit of a dark shadow. Helga is a complex character, as I've already said, and this episode is another shining example of that. Helga isn't usually afraid to be herself. She's abrasive, she's bold, and she isn't afraid to speak her mind. However, she favors loyalty, and it's not until she sees Phoebe laughing at her expense that she changes her ways to pretend to be someone that she's not. Helga, who we know as being unapologetically herself, breaks down that barrier and pretends to be a girly girl who's into makeup and fashion. Phoebe laughing at her, one reason, but on another note, being excluded is a further reason. Everyone was included in that slumber party except for Helga. Meanwhile, the boys excluded her from their baseball game as well on the basis that she's a girl, but at the same time, they mock her, telling her that she isn't a girl. It's kind of obnoxious when you look at it like that. She's not girly enough to fit in with the girls' standard, but she's too much of a girl to fit in with the boys. It's a lose-lose situation for Helga that left her feeling like she had no other choice than to pretend to be something that she isn't. All of these episodes have made me feel for Helga, but this one specifically hits hard, especially for one that isn't inherently meant to be perceived as sad, per se. It's sad to think that Helga perceived herself as not pretty enough or girly enough to fit in with the girls, yet at the end of the episode she ends up being confident in herself and her distaste for all the girly things that she was pressured into. At the heart of this, the episode is a true example of why you should always be yourself, and I feel like in the beginning, though it was painful for Helga to be excluded, she was completely in the right for being unapologetically herself. To hell with the boys for mocking her and not including her, and to hell with the girls for not thinking she was good enough to fit in at their slumber party. Helga is a truly unique character, and given her struggles at home, it makes me glad to see when she's unapologetically herself. Now we're going to slowly veer into the next topic I want to cover. I say that because this episode relates to Helga's perception of herself, but it also does relate to our next topic, which is an obvious one that I'm sure you saw coming, and that would be Helga's top secret obsession with Arnold. The episode that's going to bridge this gap is the season 5 episode, Helga's Masquerade. This episode starts off with Arnold talking to Lila in class and fawning over her, while Helga's in the back of the classroom angrily watching.
Here you go, Helga. Excuse me. Huh? I think I just offered you an invitation to my costume party this weekend.
Oh, yeah, thanks.
Now, move along, would you, sister? Ingrate.
Throughout the rest of the day, Helga sees Arnold flirting with Lila, which drives Helga absolutely nuts.
And yet, how I wish I was born a little Miss Perfect. How I long to be funny and kind and feminine. How I dream that I could somehow be more like Lila, so that you, my love, might blindly worship me instead.
That gives Helga the idea to start acting like Lila so she can get attention from Arnold. Helga straight up goes right up to Lila and asks her to teach her how to be more like she is. Helga proceeds to spend a good amount of time picking Lila's brain.
How about this whole acting like a girly girl routine? I could really use a few pointers.
Well, for starters, you could try and be less argumentative. You do tend to get in oh so many fights and confrontations.
Non-confrontational. I like it.
Helga decides that she's going to start being more like Lila tomorrow, so she decides to start by telling all the boys a story.
Remember, just stick to true events.
True life. Got it. Oh, yeah. So I'm sitting on the couch the other night watching TV when Big Bob walks in with a bag from Fong Chung's under his arm. Miriam, who's wearing some silky nightgown thing, takes one look at him and says,
Chinese takeout? I thought you said we were gonna make out.
Needless to say, after the story, all of the other kids are completely uninterested. Later, we see Rhonda talking to everyone about how she can't figure out what to wear to the party, and Lila tells Helga that this is a perfect opportunity to give Rhonda a compliment.
Well, if you ask me, Rhonda, I think you should go with ballerina. That way, the tutu will cover up your thighs and your legs won't look as fat. Oh, what? Oh, what'd I do?
That's it.
After botching that, Helga gets uninvited from the costume party. We then see Helga in the lunchroom, and Harold is straight up antagonizing her in front of everyone, but Lila tells her that this is the perfect opportunity not to be so confrontational.
You're so ugly, Helga! You better not sit anywhere near me, or I might lose my appetite!
Lila calls her out on it, and Helga says that she isn't trying hard enough, so she's going to spend every waking moment with Lila to get it right. We then get a montage of Helga progressively becoming more and more like Lila, which as a result makes her a lot more liked by the rest of the kids.
Well, if you ask me, Rhonda, I think you should go with both. That way you won't have to stifle your oh-so-wonderful sense of creativity.
Lila ends up being really impressed by the progress that Helga has made. She acts like Lila, she talks like Lila, which leaves just one last box to check to meet Helga's goal. Later that night, we see her in front of her Arnold shrine as she's sewing her costume for the party.
Tonight at Rhonda's party, I'll finally show you face to face just how funny and nice and Lila-like I can be. And then, Arnold, then you will at last be mine! Ow!
We then fast forward to the costume party, and we see Helga arrive looking nearly identical to Lila. Her hair color, her style, and all. Helga approaches Arnold, and the two of them hit it off very well.
I'm certain I have an ever so amusing joke I'd like to tell you before you go.
Sure, Helga.
Whatever do you call a cow that's laying on a barn floor?
I don't know. What?
Ground beef.
Hey, that's pretty funny.
Later on, we see Helga and Arnold spending time alone together, while Gerald sits nearby looking really concerned. Gerald ends up pulling Arnold aside and asking him what he's doing spending all of his time with Helga. Arnold says that they're just having a good time together, and Gerald says that he thinks it's because Helga is looking and acting like Lila. Arnold dismisses the idea and gets back out to find Helga.
So, where were we?
You were just about to spin me around, Arnold.
Right, Lila.
What did you call me?
I don't know. What did I call you?
I'm sure you just called me Lila.
No, I don't think so.
I'm ever so certain you did, Arnold.
Well, I'm sorry. I mean, it's an easy mistake to make. You know, considering the costume.
Right.
Understandably, Helga takes extreme offense and goes right to the bathroom to reflect on her decisions. She takes off the wig and rips off her costume, deciding to go as herself instead, being fed up by pretending to be somebody else.
Helga, what happened to your costume?
I took it off, Arnold. I was feeling uncomfortable.
Oh.
So, you still up for a round to pin the tail on the monkey?
Actually, it's getting kind of cold out here. I think I'm gonna go in.
Okay. I guess I'll just see you when I see you, Arnold.
Yeah.
Helga ends up sitting by herself outside, feeling upset because she's convinced that Arnold will never like her, and there's nothing she can do to ever change that. Later on at the party, Helga overhears Arnold talking to Lila, and she hears an interesting conversation.
It was nice. I mean, sometimes Helga can be really mean, but then other times, like tonight, she can be pretty okay. And when she is, well, then I actually kind of like her. Anyway, you want to go get some punch, Lila?
I'd love to. Okay, so he doesn't like me, but he does like me. And that means I'm halfway there.
In this episode, Helga perceives Lila as being the object of Arnold's affection. She wants Arnold's affection, so as a result, she strives to be more like Lila. This ties in a lot with Helga's reflection upon herself. She feels like the person she isn't good enough to get Arnold's attention, so she feels the need to act like someone else in order to get his attention. Helga feels like by being herself, she just pushes Arnold away, but if she can be more like Lila, she can get his attention. However, she takes it a little too far. Instead of changing her own character to be slightly more like Lila, she fully embraces the role and straight up tries to emulate Lila down to a T, which results in, of course, Helga not being herself, as well as Arnold calling her the wrong name, which hits her the hardest. That's the moment when she realizes that she doesn't want this. She doesn't want Arnold to like her because she's just like Lila. She wants Arnold to like the real her. By the end of the episode, she realizes that Arnold does like the real her in a friendly way, as long as she's herself and is just slightly less abrasive, which gives her hope. But ultimately, we need to realize why she did this in the first place. It's her obsession with Arnold that brought her to this point. On that note, it's time to unpack this just a little further. We're going to dive further into the hidden obsession that Helga has with Arnold. In the first episode we looked at, we unpacked where all this started. We discovered why Helga has the obsession with Arnold, but now it's time to dive into the deep reality behind the gravity of her obsession. We're going to start off with the season 1 episode, The Little Pink Book. This episode would see Arnold in class while Helga is harassing him by throwing spitballs at him. We then see her take a moment to write in her little pink book about how she loves Arnold.
Your eyes, like 2 green jelly beans, are pools I want to bathe in. In the classroom, my heart doth swoon, and yet I want to beat your face in.
Class ends, and we see Helga walk onto the bus and straight up cut off a piece of Arnold's hair with some scissors.
Suddenly I feel inspired. I close this tome with my signature, beloved. H is for the head I'd like to punt. E is for every time I see the little runt. L is longing for our firstest kiss. G is for how good that longing is. And A is for Arnold, of course.
Helga reaches her bus stop, and when she gets up, she goes to put her books in her bag, but she accidentally drops her little pink book onto Gerald's stack of books. Gerald ends up reading a poem about Arnold in front of everyone.
He must have been some other Arnold.
I don't know. It fits your description pretty well, Hot Lips.
Grandpa!
Sorry, boy, couldn't resist.
Back at Helga's house, we see her going through her bag as she realizes that she doesn't have her pink book. We cut to her running up to Arnold's house where she sees him and Gerald walking in while Gerald is holding the exact pink book that she's looking for.
Why did I sign my name? I was too bold. Those poems weren't meant to be seen until I'm dead and buried, and worms have consumed my flesh. Arnold must never see that last page.
Arnold and Gerald walk into Arnold's room as they start to try and figure out who wrote the book. Arnold comes to the realization that there's a slight chance that his crush might have been the one to write the poems.
Wait a minute. Ruth McDougal was there. Ruth! Arnold. She's in the 6th grade. It could happen. Dream on.
Arnold then gets the idea to call in his pet pig Abner. Abner smells the book and he sprints away. Arnold and Gerald chase him, hoping that Abner leads them to the person who wrote the book. While he's away, Helga straight up breaks into his room.
The temple of your soul, my love. Oh my gosh! What is that shampoo?
Just when she goes to grab the pink book off the shelf, she hears Arnold talking as he walks back towards his room. Helga panics, and in a snap judgment, she decides to hide in Arnold's closet. Arnold and Gerald start concocting ridiculous scientific experiments to figure out who wrote the journal. They study fingerprints from a cup belonging to one of the suspects, they study bite marks on a retainer and compare them to the bite marks on the pencil that was in the book, and they compare a hair from Ruth McDougal's headband to the hair in the journal, Arnold obviously not realizing that it's his own hair taped within the pages of the book. After all of these experiments, they didn't narrow down the suspects any further. Then Arnold gets the idea to compare the handwriting of the journal to the signatures of the people in his yearbook. They stay up nearly all night and don't really make any discoveries.
Hey Arnold, I give up. The next name on this list is Helga Pataki. Helga. You hear something?
After a debate over whether they should or shouldn't go get some ice cream, Arnold decides that he's just gonna go to bed. Gerald leaves and Helga takes out a flip phone and calls Phoebe. Helga asks Phoebe to call her mom and tell her that Helga's having a sleepover with her. Then Arnold goes to bed while Helga crashes in his closet all night.
Good night, sweet prince.
The next morning, Arnold wakes up and goes down to get breakfast, taking the pink book with him. Later at school, we see Arnold reading poems to all the other kids at school. Just then, he gets to the last page and starts to read it.
Here goes. H is for the head I like to punt. E is for every time I see the little runt. L is... Hey, what'd you do that for?
First spitball of the day, football head.
We then cut to Helga as she holds the piece of Arnold's hair in her hand, and the episode comes to an end. I feel like this episode is a good one to start off with, as it's an early episode and it really shows the complexity of Helga's love for Arnold. She literally goes from talking angrily about Arnold to confessing her love for him and then back to angry, all within the span of the same breath. Helga is a girl who's got some really complex and strong feelings. Deep down inside, she loves Arnold. However, she feels the need to hide that love with a fat layer of anger and hate as a result of fearing rejection. Her love for and obsession with Arnold leads to her straight up taking everything she can from him, including locks of his hair and, at one point in this episode, even one of his socks. As we'll discuss later on, that's not all she claims from him. However, her love for Arnold and her desire to get things from him leads her to many precarious situations, as seen in this episode, where she straight up has to sleep in his closet because she broke into his house. Keep in mind too, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We still have 5 more episodes that I'm going to cover. Helga's love for Arnold, in a way, almost surpasses just an innocent childhood crush. It's one thing for a kid to have a crush on a classmate, and it's a whole other thing to straight up cut off pieces of your crush's hair and full-blown break into their house and sleep in their closet. Now, as I said, there are other things that Helga would claim from Arnold in this series. In the first episode we talked about, we learned that Helga has an effigy of Arnold built completely out of his used gum. Now, we're gonna dive a little further into this concept with the season 1 episode, Arnold's Hat. This episode starts out with Arnold dreaming that he's flying through the clouds on a kite. He wakes up to the sound of his alarm clock and gets ready for his day. Just in case you didn't notice, that was our pal Arnold showering with his hat on. He gets out and dries his hat off with a blow dryer, and after getting dressed he goes downstairs for breakfast. Grandma tells him to take off his hat at the table and he refuses, saying that he never takes off his hat. Later at the park, we see Arnold talking to Gerald while they talk about modifications for their kite as he sticks the gum he's been chewing on underneath the bench.
Better get this home fast before it dries.
Helga sprints home with the gum, and we get a look at her famous gum effigy.
It's so beautiful. A monument to my beloved.
Helga realizes that there is one big piece missing from her Arnold statue, and that would be his hat. We see her trying to swipe Arnold's hat by pretending to be a gargoyle, which doesn't work. Then she goes on top of a building and tries to use a fishing rod to swipe his hat, but that backfires as she gets pulled through the wall of a giant birdhouse.
What do I have to do anyway? All I want is a stupid hat, that's all. And world domination. But right now, just the hat. Is that too much to ask?
Just when Helga thinks that all hope is lost, a big gust of wind comes through the park and blows Arnold's hat right off of his head and right on top of the exact building that Helga is on.
I'll never get it. Never, never, never. No matter what I do, I'll never get Arnold's hat. Hey, Arnold's hat. I knew I'd get it. I knew it all the time.
Helga goes straight home and puts the hat on the gum statue as she takes the head off and dances with it. She starts to make out with the giant wad of Arnold's used gum as her lips get stuck to it. As we cut back to Arnold, we see him being upset without his hat, and everybody notices how different he looks without it.
You look fine without it.
Hey, Arnold, what happened? You get a bad haircut or something?
No, Mr. Green, I lost my hat.
Hey, Arnold, what's with your head? You lose a fight with a lawnmower?
No, just my hat.
Hey, Arnold, are you sick? Man, you look terrible.
Arnold lays down, and we see him remembering a childhood memory from when he was a baby. He's sitting in his crib, looking up at his mom and dad as they put the hat on him. This would be the same exact hat that Arnold would wear for years to come. Later on, we see Arnold wake up to the sound of Gerald yelling for him to come outside.
Charlie Ollie man's gone insane! He's passing out free ice cream! Come on down! No, I'm not coming out without my hat. Ever. For the rest of my life. Okay, more ice cream for me.
After hearing that, Helga takes a moment reflecting on how bad she's hurt Arnold by taking his hat. She, rather poetically, comes to the conclusion that she has to return Arnold's hat so that he can be himself again. Helga runs home and goes to her closet to realize that her closet effigy of Arnold has been thrown away by her mother. We cut back to Arnold being talked to by his grandpa. He tells Arnold that he felt similar when his hair started to fall out and that what matters is what's on the inside, not the outside.
You are who you are because of what's on the inside, not the outside. The inside, not the outside. Are you listening, Arnold? The inside, not the outside.
We then cut to Helga, who is literally digging through garbage at the town dump in an effort to find Arnold's lost hat. She finds the hat being worn by a pigeon who's walking around the dump, and she goes to return it to Arnold. Back at Arnold's house, we see him finally owning the fact that he is who he is, and he struts around town without his hat.
Hey, Arnold, you're looking good. Have you been working out?
Hey, Arnold, did you get a new haircut? It looks nice.
Whoa, Arnold, man. Did anybody ever tell you you look like some sort of sun-bronzed Greek god these days?
Then, finally, Helga finds Arnold and delivers his hat to him. Arnold is so happy that he gives Helga a huge hug.
I can't believe it! Thanks, Helga! Thanks a lot!
Yuck! Who said you could touch me?
Sorry, I couldn't help it.
You trying to make me sick or something? Take your stupid hat and get out of here.
Okay, Thanks again, Helga.
I'll never wash these clothes again.
Now, there's a lot for us to dissect here. First of all, the episode is a good example of the lengths that Helga will go to in order to get more pieces for her Arnold shrine. So far, we've seen her cut off Arnold's hair to add to her collection, steal one of his socks, and now she's taking his used gum and his hat. Her obsession with Arnold in some ways seems to be a little unhealthy. However, when you keep in mind the kind of home life that Helga has and the childhood that she's had to endure up to this point, you can't help but empathize with her. In a life where she has little to look forward to at home, Arnold seems to be her shining light at the end of the tunnel. When you look at it that way, it makes it a little less creepy. Helga's home life is pretty sad. Her parents seem to not care about her and they don't take very good care of her, but having a small piece of Arnold at home seems to make her happy, which I can totally get. The effect that losing the hat had on Arnold, however, was catastrophic. That hat is a huge part of who he is. It wasn't until later in the series that we would learn about what happened to Arnold's parents and why they aren't around anymore. However, that hat is the one piece of his parents that he still has with him at all times. It means an awful lot to Arnold, and it's definitely understandable that he would be devastated by the loss of it. When Helga came to the realization that she totally messed up Arnold's whole world by taking the hat, we see a truly beautiful thing happen. She finds out that her mom threw out her Arnold effigy, and Helga ends up taking herself all the way to the town dump and spends hours digging through tons and tons of garbage to find the hat. That is a tremendous feat. She truly cares for Arnold's well-being and loves him so much that she would dig aimlessly through massive piles of garbage just to make him happy. Bear in mind the gravity of just how dangerous that is. There's so much at a dump that could hurt a 9-year-old kid. Chemicals, broken glass, possibly used needles, mold, bacteria of all sorts, and all of that considered, Helga was willing to go through it all. That is a huge step. To the public, Helga portrays herself as absolutely selfish. She plays herself off as only caring about herself and very little else other than that. However, this episode shows us that behind closed doors, she truly cares about Arnold, and it's not just a crush or a creepy obsession, she genuinely cares about him and his mental well-being. With that being said, putting up the facade of being brash and selfish while secretly being selfless towards one specific person is a huge burden to bear. It's a massive secret that Helga, for the most part, is tasked with keeping on her own. However, throughout the series, we would see that keeping the secret is no easy task, and that there's times when Helga skirts a fine line between keeping the secret and letting it out for everyone to hear. We're going to explore that topic just a little more while we check out the Season 3 episode, Helga Blabs It All. The episode begins with Helga at the dentist, with him telling her that she has a massive cavity and it's going to need a lot of filling. The dentist asks her if she wants some laughing gas, and she agrees, having never tried it before. We see the screen get a rose-tinted hue around the edges as Helga gets straight up zooted on laughing gas. 20 minutes later, we see her telling the dentist all about her deepest, darkest secret.
This Arnold guy, he's been on my mind morning, noon, and night for the past 6 years.
Well, you don't say.
I mean, think about that. When you consider that I am currently 9 years old, that is fully 2/3 of my young life. Is that crazy or what? Why do I torture myself by keeping it all a big secret?
Finishing up here.
Helga falls out of the chair and runs for the lobby, deciding that she's gonna go tell Arnold herself. She goes right for the phone and decides to call Arnold to tell him the truth.
Oh, Arnold, it's me, Helga. Yes, Helga G. Pataki, the one who worships you. Yes, wakes each day full of passionate thoughts of you. Oh, my angel, sweet love. Oh, how I love.
Did you hear something just now?
No.
From there, we see Arnold and Gerald going to the boarding house as Helga hides behind some nearby trash cans on a mission to delete the message on his answering machine. She plots away into the boarding house by taking a campfire lass who's going door to door selling chocolate turtles and mugging her in the alley behind the boarding house.
Hello, what are you supposed to be?
What's it look like? I'm a campfire lass. Faith and Begorra, haggis.
Okay, I suppose you'll be wanting to sell me some cookies then. Hold on.
As Grandpa's trying to call Arnold to the door, Helga sneakily disappears, having hidden inside the grandfather clock in the entryway to the boarding house. She goes through the house looking for the answering machine. She makes her way upstairs and finds the answering machine, just barely going undetected by Arnold and the other boarding house residents. She ends up going up a small service elevator with a rope, and she lowers herself down while she tries to get the tape from the answering machine. Arnold and his friends are meeting for their club to discuss pooling money together for a go-kart.
Yeah! I've got an idea. Why don't we have the meeting right here in the hallway? Oh, brother! Why doesn't everybody I know just show up so they can all spend the rest of their lives in this hole?
Helga ends up calling Phoebe and telling her to pay the Jolly Ollie man to come park outside of the boarding house and give away free ice cream, which works like a charm to get Arnold and the other kids out of the boarding house. It can't ever be that easy, though. As she starts lowering down, Arnold's grandma comes out of a nearby room, and she's dusting the house, and she decides that she's going to play the message.
Yes, here it is. Helen of Troy. Yes. And Miss Troy wanted to tell you that she was selling a kind of passion fruit drink or something.
Huh?
You know, I really don't like telephone solicitations. Why would you want to buy a soft drink over the phone, I ask you? And you know, they always seem to call right at dinner time.
Thankfully, and also kind of unfortunately, Grandma isn't all the way there mentally, so she completely butchers the message. Finally, the hallway is empty, and Helga ends up getting the tape and making her grand escape, but it doesn't go exactly as planned. She misses her swing to the window and ends up falling through Arnold's in-the-wall couch and right into Arnold's room.
So about the go-kart.
Finally, she escapes Arnold's boarding house, but unfortunately, the entire troop of campfire lasses are outside waiting to get revenge on her for jumping their friend, and the episode ends with Helga running away. This episode is a prime example of the perfect tip of the iceberg of the things that Helga has to do to hide her secret from Arnold. Much like the last episode where Helga broke into Arnold's house and slept in his closet overnight, this one would again see Helga literally breaking into Arnold's house in order to keep her secret from anyone. Thankfully, the only one to hear the message was Arnold's grandma, who couldn't make 2 cents of it. However, at the end of the episode, it was still discovered that Helga was in Arnold's house when everyone saw her in his room. In this episode, we see Helga in a blissful state at the dentist while she reflects on why she hasn't told Arnold her secret. It's kind of sweet to see her in the state of mind where she thinks that her telling Arnold the truth just makes sense. However, when she's out in the office and she actually calls Arnold, everyone starts laughing at her. When she finally comes to and the laughing gas wears off, she realizes what she did and that everyone is still laughing at her. I can't help but think that this sequence of events was definitely worse for the trauma that Helga's already been through. As we've already established, Helga feels the need to hide her feelings for Arnold behind a layer of brash abrasiveness out of fear of being rejected and being ridiculed by her peers. For her to be ridiculed by a bunch of random strangers in the dentist office while in the state of mind that she was in, I'd imagine would add another layer of trauma on top of what we've already seen from her peers ridiculing her. Then for her to have to jump through serious hoops to make sure that she isn't found out by Arnold and everyone else, again, I'd imagine would have added another layer of trauma on top of that. Helga had to straight up crawl through vents in Arnold's house in order to stop from her secret getting out. Yet again, another example of the things that Helga's willing to do to make sure that no one knows her secret. But that's just the start of it. We're gonna dive a little further down the rabbit hole and get a deeper look at some of the things Helga's willing to do in order to hide her secret. Next up, we're looking at the season 4 episode, Helga's Parrot. This episode starts out with Helga about to walk into her house when she sees Arnold and Lila walking down the street. She makes a rude comment to herself and walks inside to find her father talking to a parrot.
All hail the Beeper King! What? Beeper King!
Just what I need. Bob in stereo.
Helga angrily tells her dad that everyone knows that parrots can't think for themselves, and they just repeat what other people say. Later that night, Bob is laying in bed watching TV, but the parrot won't stop talking and he gets angry at it. He decides to put it in Helga's room instead.
Arnold, my love, my sultry preteen, why must I hold you only whilst I dream? Will I be forever enslaved by your spell? Why must I worship you and never ever tell? Oh, Arnold, you make my girlhood tremble. My senses all go wacky. Someday I'll tell the world my love. Oh, my name's not Helga Pataki. Oh.
All of the in-depth and partially graphic words that Helga just said are basically burned into the parrot's vocabulary as we hear the parrot talking about Arnold in the morning.
You make my girlhood tremble. My senses all go wacky. Shut up! I'll tell the world my love. Or my name's not Helga Pataki. Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
Helga gets extremely angry at the parrot and starts beating its cage. She literally threatens to kill the bird, and she goes into the garage and straight up comes back with a chainsaw to full-on murder it. However, when she was in the garage, Bob came into her room and violently grabbed the bird, letting it escape out the window in the process.
Why don't you come back inside? We can talk this over. What do you say?
Yuck! You can run, but you can't hide! I'll hunt you down, I swear, you hear me?
We then get a montage of Helga chasing the bird around town, trying to catch it with the net. Then, of course, the bird goes right into the worst place that it could possibly be.
Tell the world!
Oh my.
Helga sits outside, contemplating how she's gonna get the parrot back. She decides to knock on Arnold's door and finds him answering with the parrot sitting on his head, reciting her poetry, which automatically crosses that idea off the list. Arnold sits at the table with his grandpa talking about the parrot. Grandpa says that Arnold can keep the parrot as a pet, and they go off to the pet store to get supplies. Just when Helga goes to grab the parrot, Arnold sees her and she has to play it off cool. She comes up with the quick excuse that she's there buying a pet, and she ends up walking out of the store with a large, scary-looking monitor lizard. Helga gives the lizard to Phoebe and tells her to take care of it while she goes back to Arnold's house in an attempt to get the parrot back.
What's wrong? Are you okay? It's okay. I bet you just got lonely.
And just like that, Helga yet again breaks into Arnold's house, which, at least this time, was an accident. Just then, Lila shows up to work on a project with Arnold, and Helga decides to hide behind his in-wall couch. Arnold and Lila sit on the couch while Helga messes with them, trying to get them to leave.
Girlhood tremble.
Ow! Cut it out, Lila.
I beg your pardon?
You flicked my ear.
I'm certain I didn't do anything of the sort, Arnold.
Well, somebody flicked it.
Someday I'll tell the world my love. Or my name's not.
Arnold, there's something strange going on here.
Lila ends up getting freaked out by what's going on, and she decides to leave, saying that she just wants to finish the report at her house tomorrow. Later on, we cut back to Helga, still in Arnold's room, waiting for him to fall asleep so that she can snag the parrot and leave. Arnold finally comes to bed, and we see this happen.
He's getting undressed. I can't look. Be still, my bruised and aching heart.
Good night, little parrot.
The next morning, we see Helga get up and try to take the parrot when Arnold's alarm goes off right before she can grab it. She hides behind the in-wall couch again, but this time she loses the remote, leaving her stuck in there. Arnold leaves to take the parrot to school for show and tell, and Helga straight up breaks her way out. Back at school, Arnold is showing off the parrot, while Phoebe stands by with the monitor lizard on a leash. The parrot starts reciting Helga's poem word for word. Helga starts trudging towards it with an umbrella as she prepares to attack the bird. However, right when the parrot is about to say the last line, which includes Helga's name, this happens.
Arnold, you make my girlhood tremble. My senses all go wacky. Someday I'll tell the world my love, or my name's not Hel.
The whole class just witnesses the bird get eaten, and they are all devastated. Meanwhile, Mr. Simmons tries to tell them that they just witnessed the circle of life.
But let's keep in mind that it's part of the evolution of our planet, in which we all play a special part.
Mr. Simmons!
You and me are gonna get along just fine.
This episode is pretty morbid on multiple levels, and it really is a prime example of the lengths that Helga is willing to go through in order to hide her secret. She literally was prepared to murder an innocent animal just because it had the ability to spill the beans on her Arnold obsession. In this episode, we see Helga yet again break into Arnold's house and hide in his room for hours on end. She even goes as far as breaking through the floor in order to escape Arnold's house. As I've previously said, Helga has a very advanced vocabulary and a very poetic way with words. However, this is a great example of just how that can work against her. The parrot had heard her soliloquy about Arnold and he memorized it word for word. When Arnold adopted that parrot as a pet, he heard the parrot's poetic way with words, which resulted in him asking the parrot to recite that poem for everyone to hear. I also can't help but bring up the trembling girlhood comment. This is one that I see many people bring up when talking about adult references in our favorite Nicktoons. Hey Arnold is a show that isn't afraid to tackle serious topics, but it very rarely tackles sexual humor and references. However, in this episode, we see Helga not only make that comment about her girlhood, but we also see her straight up watching Arnold get naked. Now, I'm no legal expert, but I'm pretty sure there's been multiple laws broken by Helga in this episode. Not only did she break into Arnold's house, cause serious damage, and attempt to murder an animal multiple times, but she also straight up committed voyeurism. If you didn't take note of the fact already, Helga is willing to jump through literally any hoop to hide her secret from Arnold. Pretty much nothing is off limits with her. I also need to bring up the shrine to Arnold. As I brought up earlier, the fact that she has a shrine dedicated to Arnold takes her obsession to a whole new level, but I've also noticed how we've seen the shrine change over the years. At first, the shrine was made of Arnold's used gum. In this episode, it looked like it was made of fruit. Later on, in Helga on the Couch, we would see it looking like it was made out of carved out wood. Her shrine to Arnold seems to be a fluidly changing thing based on the timeline of the show. For Helga, her love for Arnold and her obsession for him goes very, very deep. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Helga is a truly complex character with some very complex emotions. I can't help but think about her mental health. She's had this obsession and shrine dedicated to Arnold for nearly 2/3 of her life. When I say mental health, I'm not implying that she's mentally unwell by any means, but I can't help but think about what effect it has on her psyche. Not only the things that she's done to try to hide her secret, but also just the general fact that she has a really deep-rooted secret love and obsession with Arnold that she's the sole one responsible for hiding. Well, as I said before, for the most part. There's one other recurring character in the series who's aware of her love for Arnold, and that would be none other than her best friend, Phoebe. We see Phoebe actively get involved in the season 4 episode Helga Sleepwalks. This episode starts out with school starting at PS 118. Mr. Simmons is teaching everyone about health and fitness while Helga admires Arnold.
Arnold, my little bookworm, how keen you are, how studious, how diligently you take notes in your little schoolboy's notebook. If only I could find the nerve to tell you how much I worship that giant oblong brain of yours.
Later, we see her walking past Arnold's house when she sees his silhouette through the window of his bedroom. She reflects poetically on how she wants to find the strength to march to his door and tell him how she really feels.
That's right, Arnold. It's me, Helga Pataki, the girl who's always staring at you from across a crowded room, the girl who's constantly lurking in the shadows spying on you, the girl who's forever stalking you and following you home.
We see her daydreaming in her mind about how much she's in love with him and how she has been since the first time she laid eyes on him. Later on, at Helga's house, she's complaining to her mom, who's sleeping while standing up.
Mom, what did you do? Forget to go shopping again? Hey! Earth to Miriam, there's no food around here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know, honey. It's an awful story, really. You see, I went to the store this afternoon and I did a little shopping. Only I accidentally left the groceries on the roof of the car, and when I pulled away, everything just sort of spilled all over the road.
Miriam suggests that Helga eat some of Big Bob's pork rinds, and we see her sitting on bed eating them right before she falls asleep. Then we see Helga get up and sleepwalk right out of her house. She wakes up on Arnold's porch, freaking out as Grandpa Phil slams the door on her.
Who was it, Grandpa?
Oh, just one of those pesky door-to-door religious groups with their fast-talking paper flowers, short man.
Oh.
Helga talks to herself, saying that this is just like her daydream where she went to Arnold's house and confessed her deep, dark feelings to him. She comes to the realization that her subconscious desires have taken over her body and caused her to sleepwalk to Arnold's house to confess her secret.
And unless I want my life to be completely over, I'd better make sure it doesn't ever happen again. But how?
Later, we see Helga at home as she stacks a bunch of furniture in front of her door, and she eats a few pork rinds right before going to bed. Hours later, we see Helga's room looking like an absolute mess, with everything from in front of the door moved as Helga walks right out the front door and onto the city bus. She gets off the bus right outside of Arnold's house, and we see her walk into the alley as we cut to morning, where we see Grandma making breakfast while Helga sits at the table sleeping.
Oh, Eleanor, I just can't tell you how wonderful it is to see you again. Reminds me of the days when we used to have brunch at Campobello.
Grandma, who are you talking to?
Oh, just Eleanor Roosevelt, dear. But she was called away on official White House business and jumped out the window.
Helga ends up coming to the decision that she just needs to completely stop sleeping in order to make this stop happening. We cut to Helga at school later on, and Phoebe notices that she's acting different.
Are you okay?
Of course I'm okay, Phoebe. What are you talking about?
Well, nothing. It's just that you seem rather perky this morning.
Perky? Oh, must be the entire thermos of coffee I just drank.
Coffee? Since when do you drink coffee?
Helga gets home from school and immediately downs a cup of coffee, then goes straight to her room to snack on some more pork rinds. Before you know it, she is passed out and walking right out of the house, sleepwalking right into Arnold's house yet again.
Hey! Oh, sure, now you're in a hurry.
Excuse me.
Helga decides that she's finally had enough and she's gonna reach for some professional help. She goes to the library to find Phoebe and tell her about what's going on.
Let's put it this way, Phoebe. If I don't stop sleepwalking, I could wind up revealing my most intimate, guarded secret.
You mean?
Yes, but let's not talk about it, okay?
Phoebe decides that she's gonna stay over at Helga's house and sleep in front of the door so that if Helga tries to leave, she'll wake up.
Now, how about a nutritious bedtime health snack to settle your nerves?
Don't worry, I've got my health snack right here.
Phoebe falls asleep and wakes up to the sound of Helga crawling out of her window. As Phoebe runs out to try to catch her, she slips on the empty bag of pork rinds, and when she reads the package, she seems rather alarmed. Helga makes it all the way to Arnold's house, and Phoebe walks up as Helga starts climbing up the fire escape. Phoebe catches her as she's basically at the window talking about how she loves Arnold.
Oh, Phoebe? Where am I?
You were sleepwalking again. You climbed Arnold's fire escape and you were talking to him through his window.
Well, what did I say? Did I tell him anything important?
I'm afraid so.
You mean?
Yes, Helga. You told him everything.
Hello? Hello?
We then learn that the silhouette that Helga was looking at through his window was actually just a floral arrangement that looks oddly like Arnold's head. Arnold explains that he woke up to the sound of a crash outside and that was all he heard.
So what's happening? What are you guys doing?
What does it look like we're doing? Here, boy, we're taking a walk.
Taking a walk on my fire escape?
That's right, football head, on your fire escape. It's a free country. We can walk wherever we feel like.
As they're walking back to Helga's house, Phoebe shows Helga the bag of pork rinds and Helga reads the warning that's on it.
Warning, excessive ingestion may cause sleeping disorders, including sleeplessness, narcolepsy, sleep apnea, and in some cases, severe sleepwalking.
You mean it's not because of... Oh, you mean I'm cured?
Precisely.
So the whole time I was sleepwalking, it was because of pork rinds. How about that?
Yep. It's amazing what strange effects certain foods can have on the human body.
Phoebe, being the good friend that she is, takes Helga's secret very seriously, and she promises just to forget that this whole fiasco ever happened. This episode is a really interesting one that definitely shines a light on how Helga's brain operates. Sure, it was the pork rinds that were causing her to sleepwalk to begin with. However, it was her deep-seated love and obsession for Arnold that was causing her brain to go right for that when she was in autopilot mode. Though her subconscious wants were not what was driving the sleepwalking initially, they played a massive role in this happening to begin with. Helga is very lucky to have a friend like Phoebe who understands what's going on and is so willing to help. The burden of keeping the secret is a lot to put on the shoulders of one person due to the excessive nature of her obsession. The depth of her love for Arnold and the hoops that she's willing to go through to obtain more items to add to her shrine, and of course the countless sketchy situations she gets into to hide her secret. It all culminates in a massive whirlwind of emotions that makes Helga who she is deep on the inside. A few days ago, I was talking about the concept for this video with one of my coworkers, and she pointed out an aspect that I had never thought of. That being the fact that there's a part of this obsession and love for Arnold that could be seen as addictive. Helga's love for Arnold and her obsession have been an ongoing constant in her life for almost a decade by this point in the series. A lot of young people who have crushes tend to move on after a certain period of time. It's pretty rare for a childhood crush to last as long as Helga's has. Furthermore, to have such a deep, dark, and intimate secret can definitely be an addictive thing. As we saw in Helga on the Couch all the way at the start of this video, the feeling of having that secret and realizing that she can keep it as long as she wants to was a feeling that got Helga really excited. She is genuinely ecstatic at the idea that she can feel the way that she does about Arnold, and he is none the wiser. However, one can't help but think about how hard it has to be on her mental health. It has to be mentally taxing to sit on a secret like that for so long, meanwhile deep down inside you really just want to tell that person how you feel. I often find myself wondering if maybe Helga ever gets sick of hiding the truth from Arnold. We're going to finish off this episode by exploring that topic just a little further as we look at the Season 2 episode, Helga's Love Potion. This episode starts off with Helga waking up in the morning and going right to her closet to praise her shrine to Arnold.
May this day be the day that you see me with love's eyes, as I seest you, oh flaxen-haired angel. Flaxen-haired angel? That's good.
Later at school, we see Helga prank Arnold by spraying him with the water fountain. Gerald takes note of how Helga always seems to pick on Arnold in particular. We then cut back to Helga.
Why do I only show him my cruel side? Why not reveal the tender love I feel?
Later on in class, Helga's doing her usual throwing spitballs at Arnold when Mr. Simmons decides that he's gonna pass back some papers that he graded, but he stops to read one out loud.
I can't tell you who wrote it because it's signed anonymous. Each morn I see you bend to drink from love's own crystal pool. I tremble near you, try to think, will I forever say you stink? Am I bound by this tragic rule?
Later on, we see Helga going through the lunch line with Phoebe while Arnold is behind them in line. Helga takes the last tapioca pudding and Arnold comments about how he wishes there was more. Presented with the opportunity to actually do something nice for Arnold, she acts like she's gonna give it to him, but instead she purposefully spills it all over Arnold and blames him like it's his fault. Afterwards, she immediately regrets that decision. She sits down to talk to Phoebe about it.
Just hypothetically, let's just say that I'm obsessed with, hopelessly focused on, this certain thing. Let's call it ice cream.
Well, maybe you should put ice cream behind you. Try to forget about ice cream and get on with your life.
Armed with Phoebe's advice, Helga decides that she's gonna try and forget about Arnold. However, she's reminded of him everywhere she goes. The flower shop, billboards around town, the clouds, even the water in the river reminds her of Arnold.
He's everywhere. I can't stop seeing him. I want to forget him, but I can't. I've got to be rid of this obsession. I wish I was out of love.
Helga ends up stumbling upon Madame Blanche's love potion shop. She goes in and asks Madame Blanche to help her, and Madame Blanche hands her a small heart-shaped vial that she poured a little bit of grape soda into.
Here you go, Toots. Drink this tonight, right after you say the name of the one that you wish to love no more.
Really? That's all I have to do?
Yeah, that's all you... Oh, well, pay me $10, of course.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh.
Later that night, we see Helga finally throwing out all of her Arnold collection.
Volumes 1 through 14. My Arnold shrine. And finally, my locket. Farewell, and be done with you cursed symbols of my misspent youth!
Helga then very dramatically drinks the out of love potion and she starts seeing hearts all around her and things get really trippy. She hallucinates herself falling into an Arnold-shaped ice cream sundae as she falls down onto her bed. Helga wakes up in the morning feeling like she got hit by a truck. She decides to test herself and she kneels down and reads some of her Arnold poetry that she threw away.
Oh, orzo-shaped Prometheus, wandering dim hallways of my... What is this crap?
Helga then proceeds to go to school and act completely cordial towards Arnold. Arnold is completely caught off guard, as is Mr. Simmons, who has always enjoyed getting to know Helga through her poems.
I look forward to reading yours first, Helga. Getting to know you through your writing assignments has been one of the joys of my teaching career.
Morning. I put on a pink dress. I eat oatmeal for breakfast. The news is on. Mom isn't listening. My dad reads the paper. I go to school. Not much of a poem. Oh well.
Helga, are you all right?
Arnold decides to ask Helga about why she didn't torture him all day like she normally does, thinking maybe she's sick or something, but she says no and just thanks him for asking.
Arnold, so normal, so average, and yet, what a regular guy. Oh, hi, Brainy.
Later on, Helga's walking down the street, and she looks at all the things that used to remind her of Arnold, but she seems very unenthused about life without her love for Arnold.
I don't feel anything, except I'm bored. Hey, Phoebes.
How are things proceeding, Helga?
I'm okay. Not high, not low.
Phoebe comes up to her and she says that she's just empty of feelings and that something is missing. Phoebe tells her that what's missing is her obsession.
Maybe I need art. I mean, ice cream. To love. To hate. To inspire. But I'm under a spell. Madame Blanche. She's got to reverse the spell.
Helga decides to go right back to Madame Blanche's shop and she begs her to take the spell off of her. Madame Blanche tells her the truth. She explains that the potion was just grape soda, chamomile, and some ginseng.
Huh? It's just a homemade concoction. There's nothing keeping you from loving anybody.
You mean I paid you $10 for some grape pop?
And a little chamomile,
Then I want my money back!
Helga ends up walking out of the shop with an excited pep in her step, reinvigorated at the realization that she can still love Arnold. She even skips by Brainy and gives him a kiss on the forehead.
Arnold! Hey, watch where you're going, you little yellow-haired shrimp!
Oh, sorry, Helga.
That's more like it.
This episode is an interesting one to dissect. In the beginning, we see Helga realizing how her actions affect Arnold negatively, and she actively wishes that she could be nice to him, but unfortunately, that's just something that she is not capable of. It's a double-edged sword, as Helga recognizes that her love for Arnold feels good for her, but unfortunately, it leaves Arnold feeling hurt, which leads to her wanting to literally stop loving Arnold for the sake of his mental well-being. Deep down inside, I wonder if Helga subconsciously recognizes that it's for her own mental well-being as well. As we discussed, her bearing the burden of keeping the secret pretty much by herself is a really hard pill to swallow. I wonder if, somewhere deep down inside, Helga recognized just how mentally taxing it is to keep such a massive portion of herself guarded at all times and keeping everyone away from her truth. All in all, it's almost like Helga has massive walls that she builds around herself at all times. She puts on this facade of a girl who's tough, brash, and not to be messed with. But once upon a time, she was once a young, vulnerable little girl who looked at life completely differently. Thinking all the way back to the first episode we talked about, Helga on the Couch, we see a glimpse at Helga's childhood. Before Helga was in love with Arnold, before she was made fun of by her classmates, before all of this, she was a young girl who probably emotionally still wasn't a clean slate. She had a lot going on at home, whether she realized it or not, though I'm sure she probably did. She was emotionally abused by her parents, who showed preferential treatment towards her sister Olga. However, when we see Helga go to preschool for the first time, a lot happens that really pivots her emotional development, and we see some important character traits develop for the first time. That moment where Arnold was nice to her in her time of need would result in Helga forming an emotional bond with him, one that would follow her for many years to come. However, due to emotional abuse from her parents, emotional abuse from her peers, and her overall perception of herself, she feels the need to hide her love for Arnold. However, that love would quickly blossom into an obsession, given that Helga is an emotional girl who feels her feelings very strongly. On all levels, considering everything that we've gone through over here, one can't help but feel for Helga. She's obviously been through a lot that resulted in her becoming the Helga that we all know. Helga is one of those characters that I will always have a soft spot for in my heart. Sure, she's brash and mean to Arnold and nearly everyone else, but it's not without reason. Her struggles in life are not a result of her own actions. As a matter of fact, one could argue that all of Helga's actions are more or less reactions to how everyone else has treated her and continue to treat her. Internally, Helga is an emotional powerhouse who really has a lot of love to give, but externally, she is a bold and strong girl who feels like she needs to hide her emotional side behind a wall of fierce abrasiveness. And I have to admit that in the process of making this video, I've come to feel that Helga is somewhat justified in the choices that she makes and the things that she does. What it truly boils down to is the fact that Helga is an emotional girl who's going through a pivotal point in her growth as a person while struggling with not only the curveballs that life throws at her, but also the negativity that's thrown at her by the people who surround her, minus Arnold, of course. Now, I gotta say, this video has been a wild ride of an emotional roller coaster, and I think that this is finally where we're gonna end it. I just want to say that I'm really proud of this video and I love how it turned out. I really hope that you guys enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you made it all the way through this video, please drop a like and let me know down in the comments that you made it all the way to the end. But of course, what do you think? Did this video change your perception of Helga as a character? Did it help you understand why she is the way she is? Let me know in the comments down below. I always love hearing your guys' feedback. Of course, drop a like on this video and give praise to the YouTube algorithm in hopes that it promotes this video to everyone else, and I will see you all in the next one. Peace. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Hey Arnold is a fantastic cartoon. I might even say it's one of the most underrated Nicktoons of all time. One thing I love about this show is how it will tackle many serious subjects, whether it be in a very subtle way or in a very blatant and straight up way. Whether it's the subtle implication that Helga's mother is an alcoholic who suffers with severe depression, or the ostracization of people such as Monkey Man or Pigeon Man for not fitting into the societal norm, it's clear that Hey Arnold is no stranger to serious topics. I've talked about Hey Arnold before in my video showing the top 5 episodes that taught us important life lessons, but I really feel like visiting Hey Arnold again for another video, so here we are. Today we're looking at the top 5 episodes of Hey Arnold that hit us right in the feels. Just gotta say, if you watch this video and you find yourself thinking, oh well, what about the Christmas episode with Mr. Wynn's daughter, or oh, what about the Pigeon Man episode? Well,
I can explain.
I covered those episodes and many more in previous videos. I'll link those videos in the description box down below if you want to check them out. If you feel like an important episode was missed, check out those videos because maybe I've already covered it and you're missing out on an awesome video. Also, I just wanted to say thank you very much to all my subscribers. I took a little break from YouTube for personal reasons, and while I was gone, I gained over 50 subscribers, which is just crazy. It might not seem like much, but to me, it's a huge deal because I actually haven't told any friends or family about my YouTube channel, which means that all of my subscribers are random people out there on the internet who find my content interesting, and that means the world to me. If you're subscribed to my channel, thank you so much. If you're new here, then please subscribe so you don't miss any of my new videos, and make sure you drop a like and leave a comment because it helps me a whole bunch. Without further ado, let's get right into the video. Number 5. Chocolate Boy. Most of the episodes I'm going to cover follow a relatively similar theme, so I figured I'd start with an episode that has a separate theme all of its own. The eponymous character that episode mainly follows is Chocolate Boy. The episode begins with recess at PS 118. We see kids playing and talking together, then we pan to Chocolate Boy, who's sitting on the ground obsessively licking chocolate wrappers. Wolfgang and Edmund are in the background laughing at him and comparing his desperation to that of a hungry dog. Then they approach him and make him jump up and down and act like a dog in exchange for a chocolate bar, all for their amusement. Edmund gets the idea for Wolfgang to tell Chocolate Boy that he has a 10-pound bag of chocolate at home and that he'll give it to Chocolate Boy if he can go 2 whole weeks without eating any chocolate. Just the thought of it starts driving Chocolate Boy mad. but he ends up agreeing to it, and Wolfgang ends up telling one of his fellow 5th graders, Mickey, to follow Chocolate Boy and make sure he doesn't eat any chocolate at all for the whole 2 weeks. Licking chocolate off of wrappers, obsessing over chocolate, and being willing to do any demeaning act in order to get his next fix for chocolate. If you haven't made the obvious connection yet, Chocolate Boy's mannerisms and tendencies are very similar to that of a drug addict. Chocolate Boy ends up coming to Arnold for help, getting clean from chocolate for 2 weeks. Everyone tells Arnold that'll be impossible, regardless of Arnold's long-standing track record for helping people. But Arnold doesn't shy away from the task. He decides to help Chocolate Boy finally kick his chocolate obsession, which is no easy task. They start by clearing all of the chocolate that Chocolate Boy has stashed all around his bedroom. The next day, we see Chocolate Boy in class with his eyes beet red, shaking and muttering about chocolate, kinda similar to withdrawals that a drug addict would face after finally trying to get clean. The bell rings, and he sprints out of class and right up to the vending machine where he's talking to the chocolate in the machine. At one point, Chocolate Boy ends up in the corner of a hallway at school, sitting down. Arnold comes up to check on him, and Chocolate Boy falls asleep, clearly suffering side effects from going a few days without chocolate. Days later, Chocolate Boy ends up starting to behave differently, hiding under a table at lunch while holding a glass of water and what seems to be a G.I. Joe. At 10 days clean, things start to get really bizarre for Chocolate Boy.
Look at these ants. They're so happy in a line. Little ants in a line. Little chocolate ants in a little chocolate line.
Willikers! He's looking at!
Then finally, 2 weeks is up, and Chocolate Boy ends up outside of school waiting obsessively for Wolfgang to show up. When Wolfgang finally shows up, he gives Chocolate Boy the 10-pound bag of chocolate, and Arnold is absolutely let down. Arnold gets disappointed because he thought Chocolate Boy really wanted to get off of chocolate for good. Presumably, later that day, we see Chocolate Boy finish that 10-pound bag of chocolate. Wolfgang and a bunch of 5th graders approach and call Chocolate Boy pathetic for begging for more chocolate. They make Chocolate Boy do a dance while they throw chocolate at him, which is very traumatizing for Chocolate Boy. Later on, we see this scene occur. Which ends up being a massive wake-up call for Chocolate Boy. He comes back to Arnold, begging for his help to finally drop chocolate once and for all. Arnold shows him a shocking video about what chocolate can do to you. He takes Chocolate Boy into a sauna to sweat out all the chocolate from his system, and he even tries to introduce Chocolate Boy to a chocolate substitute, but none of that seems to work. Then, Arnold gets the idea to really get to the root of the problem. He tries to use a watch to perform hypnotherapy on Chocolate Boy, with the goal of finding out where his obsession with chocolate comes from. We learned that when Chocolate Boy was little, he had a nanny that loved him dearly, and she took really good care of him. She would feed him chocolate every so often as a special treat. But one day, he came home and found out that his nanny was leaving and she had to move away, which really scarred Chocolate Boy. He loved his nanny and misses her dearly. As a result, he's trying to fill the void she left behind with chocolate, and Arnold helps him realize that doing that is not a healthy coping mechanism. Chocolate Boy realizes that if his nanny saw him digging through dumpsters for chocolate and dancing for it, she really wouldn't be proud, which finally sets him free.
You don't need chocolate.
I don't eat chocolate.
You're free.
I'm free! I'm free! Free of chocolate! Haha, yeah! I'm free! No more chocolate!
By the end of the episode, Chocolate Boy ends up surprising everyone and thanking Arnold for finally helping him kick his habit. We learn that he's picked up a new obsession: radishes. It's nice that the episode ends on a positive note, with Chocolate Boy's success in leaving behind his addiction with the help of Arnold, even if he did just replace one unhealthy addiction with one more healthy addiction. Number 4, Miss Perfect. This episode introduces Lila as a new kid in class. It's her first day at school after living out in the country for her entire life. She's new to city life and really just wants to fit in. Helga and the other girls give her this whole convoluted spiel about how she needs to learn from them to fit in and make friends, which Helga says will take 2 years or 1 if she's lucky. Almost immediately, some other kids come up and invite Lila to play kickball with them, which is an absolutely blatant display of how Helga and her friends have no idea what they're talking about. Lila ends up unintentionally stepping on the other girls' toes. She answers a question in class that Phoebe wanted to answer, she impresses the 6th grade girls with her outfit when Rhonda was trying to impress them, and she disregards Helga's instructions to not be kind to the lunch ladies, which really just pisses Helga off.
She's here 2 days, and it's like she runs the place.
Who does she think she is, anyway?
Little Miss Perfect.
After seeing all of the boys in school fawning over Lila, they decide to plot an evil scheme to mess with her.
Don't worry, we'll fix her wagon. By the time we get through with her, she won't be Little Miss Perfect no more. Okay, so we're gonna...
They start by filling her locker with 16 pounds of kiwi jello, but at last second, Mr. Simmons comes up and tells Lila that she's getting assigned to a new locker. Her old locker gets assigned to Patty, who ends up getting covered in the jello and subsequently beats the living snot out of Helga. Next, the girls replace Lila's lunch with fake meat, wax fruit, and pickle juice. Lila, who is friends with Patty, decides to trade lunch with her. Naturally, this plan also leads to Helga getting the snot beaten out of her again. Finally, they concoct a really nasty plan that leads to Lila getting covered in what seems to be muck and fish remains. Lila, being humiliated and laughed at by everyone in school, ends up running out of the lunchroom crying. The next thing we see is when the episode starts to take a more serious tone. The scene cuts to a not so clean looking, tattered building with trash all over the ground outside and part of the fence falling down. We then see Lila inside sitting at a small table with folding chairs alongside her dad. They're eating meat substitute right out of the can for dinner in a room that's lit by one single hanging light bulb, has cobwebs in the cupboards, and the bathroom in the background is absolutely filthy. This is the sad moment where we get a glimpse into the actual home life of Lila.
Well, you sure are quiet tonight. Something wrong?
No, Daddy, I'm okay.
The next day at school, Helga and the other girls are talking bad about Lila when Mr. Simmons walks in and informs the class that Lila won't be coming to school today for personal reasons, and asks for a volunteer to bring Lila her homework. Helga is quick to volunteer, and next we see Helga and the other girls heading over to Lila's house. They're quick to mention how the neighborhood and Lila's house is a dump.
What a dump. I assumed Miss Perfect would live in a more luxurious domicile.
Lila's dad invites Helga in, who doesn't even seem to pay any mind to how rough the living conditions are. Helga walks out and immediately starts talking bad about Lila to the other girls when they hear crying through the window. They all stand on some garbage cans to get a better view of what's going on. They overhear Lila venting to her dad about how mean the girls at school are and how she just wants to be friends and fit in with everyone. All the meanwhile, Lila's dad gets a call about a job he applied for, being informed that he didn't get the job.
Don't worry about dinner, Daddy. We've still got 1 can of beans left in the fridge.
No, we don't. I ate them for lunch.
There, Daddy.
After seeing the struggle that Lila and her dad are going through, the girls all feel awful for how they treated Lila. They realize that they treated her really unfairly when all she wanted was to be friends with them. They end up going inside of her house and making a truly heartfelt apology to Lila.
Our actions were petty and most likely motivated by deep-seated insecurities within ourselves.
The scene ends with all the girls gathering for a group hug, and at that exact moment, Lila's dad gets another call about that same job he applied for, and turns out the hiring manager had changed his mind and decides to give Lila's dad the job. The episode ends with everything going back to normal at school. Lila telling all the boys a story, all the boys fawning over her, except this time the girls, instead of talking bad about Lila, decide to talk about how much they like her instead. If there's anything we can take from this episode, it's that obviously bullying is terrible and toxic, and that you shouldn't be so quick to judge someone because you never know what kind of struggle they're facing in their private life. Number 3. Parents' Day. This episode begins with 2 people running through an island jungle, being chased by the island's indigenous people. They escape Indiana Jones style and fly off into the sunset in their plane. Those 2 people are Arnold's parents, and Arnold's grandpa is telling him a bedtime story about how they were able to obtain a serum for a deadly sickness from the forbidden jungle. The next day at school, Mr. Simmons is reminding everyone about the Parents' Day celebration coming up, where each family is going to compete for a trophy. Understandably, Arnold seems relatively upset about this.
Yeah, I don't think I want to go, though.
Huh? Why not?
Everyone's gonna be there with their parents, and I've just got my grandparents.
Arnold gets home and his grandparents are busy training for Parents' Day, which seems to reinforce how much he is dreading that day. I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say that I really feel for Arnold in this scene because he really misses his parents. He even ends up skipping his nightly story because he's so upset. The next day, the Parents' Day tournament begins, and there's a large amount of tension between Arnold's family and Helga's family, stemming from the men of each family.
We gotta beat these characters? Oh, the trophy's practically ours.
See this? You're gonna be looking at it crossing the finish line, Pataki.
The competition ensues, and by the final event of day 1, Helga's family is in first place, and we get a glimpse of just how much of a sore loser Big Bob Pataki is.
Listen, I have taken time off from my busy schedule running a beeper empire to show up here today, so I deserve to win that Best Parent trophy. Losing it is unacceptable.
Dad, this just in. We're ahead!
During the final event of the day, which is an egg toss relay race, Helga's family ends up getting out before Arnold's family does, which prompts Big Bob to go on a yelling tirade at his daughter. And Big Bob says this specific line that, even when I was a child, absolutely made my blood boil.
We are not gonna let some orphan boy and his ancestors win this Parents' Weekend thing. You understand?
Dad! Which completely hits Arnold right where it hurts and causes him to get eliminated from the egg toss. Helga, simply just to clear her guilty conscience, makes the saddest attempt at a backhanded apology that I've ever heard, literally calling Arnold an orphan and telling him he's all alone in the world in the process. That night at dinner, Arnold ends up confessing to his grandparents that he doesn't feel comfortable at Parents' Day and that as much as he loves them, they aren't his real parents. In a state of sadness, Arnold goes to his room to go to bed. The interaction between Arnold's grandparents that follows is enough to bring a tear to my eye.
Well, now what, Pookie?
You better go talk to him, Phil.
I don't know. Somehow I don't think another bedtime story about his parents is gonna fix this.
He needs you, Phil. You better go talk to him anyway.
Okay, wish me luck.
The love that they both have for Arnold is so true and pure, and they're really faced with a hard situation where there isn't really much that they can do to ease the pain that Arnold feels. That night, Arnold's grandpa tells him the story of how his parents met and fell in love, which leads to Arnold asking about what happened to his parents and where they are now. His grandpa tells him about how one day his dad's old friend Eduardo came to visit and begged Arnold's parents to help him find a serum for a disease that's eradicating an entire village of people in his home country. They left Arnold with his grandparents and were supposed to be gone for only a week.
Won't be gone long, I promise. You be a good boy for Grandpa and Grandma, okay?
We'll be back next week, little buddy. Then I'll take you to the park.
Mommy loves you so much.
Daddy loves you, Arnold.
Bye, Mommy. Bye, Daddy.
Arnold's parents loaded up their plane and flew off for one last time, and sadly, they never came back, and their plane was never found. That night, Arnold has a dream of a memory from when he was really little. He remembers crawling through the house in the middle of the night crying, scared because he can't find his mom and dad. His grandpa comes out and comforts him.
You're not in bed, short man.
I'm scared I can't find my mommy and daddy.
Oh, now don't cry, you poor little fella. Hey, how about I tell you a warm, mythical bedtime story tonight? Yeah, that's the ticket. Did I ever tell you about the time your mom and dad worked for a midget circus in Peking?
No, tell me the story.
Oh, why? They're natural-born acrobats, your mom and dad.
This was the night where Grandpa first started his routine, telling Arnold stories about his parents every night. He also dreams of all the great memories he's had of growing up with his grandparents. Arnold wakes up in a better headspace, and he decides that he does want to go to Parents' Day again, realizing how lucky he is to have such great grandparents looking out for him. That day, the events culminate when it comes down to Arnold's family versus Helga's family in a triathlon, which results in a 1v1 battle over a giant bowl of Jell-O between Grandpa Phil and Big Bob Pataki. In the end, Phil kicks Big Bob's ass and sends him down into the Jell-O. Phoebe's family ends up winning the entire competition for best overall score over the 2 days, but what really matters is that Big Bob didn't win the trophy. The episode ends with Arnold going to bed that night and dreaming that he's getting on an airplane and flying off into the sunset, presumably to find his parents. I feel like this was some heavy foreshadowing for what the creator of the show had planned for later on in the show. All in all, there's a lot one could take from this episode, but one of the biggest sentiments I took was to be thankful for the loved ones that you have in your life. Number 2, Helga on the couch. Grab some tissues and get ready for a good cry because this episode really has a way of tugging at your heartstrings. This episode begins with a child psychologist, Dr. Bliss, being assigned to PS 118 to more or less check on the mental state of all the children who attend the school. Principal Wart seems sure that PS 118 is the school best known for picture-perfect mental health, and he is sure that she won't find anything out of the ordinary there. As soon as she walks out of his office, she sees Helga, who's blatantly walking down the hallway, bullying everyone in her path, which gets the immediate attention of Dr. Bliss. She decides to sit in on Helga's class, where she takes notice of all the noteworthy behaviors that Helga is exhibiting. Finally, Dr. Bliss witnesses Helga punching Brainy in the face, as she usually does, which results in her being sent to the principal's office.
Brainy? He doesn't mind. I do it all the time. What? You'd sock him too if he was standing there behind you breathing.
Breathing?
Yes, breathing.
The result is Dr. Bliss scheduling for Helga to come to her office after school every Tuesday and Thursday to discuss her antisocial tendencies and uncover the true emotions that she may be hiding. Helga's big concern in that moment is Dr. Bliss uncovering the fact that she has a crush on Arnold, but as we will see, Dr. Bliss ends up uncovering a lot more than that. That night, Helga's parents end up having a rather alarming conversation with her about how she shouldn't blab anything to Dr. Bliss because things are meant to be swept under the rug, and how this would have never happened to Olga, Helga's older sister whom they idolize. Later that night, Helga ends up praising her shrine to Arnold and thinking to herself about how that psychologist will never uncover her deepest, darkest secret, her love for Arnold, which again seems to be her primary concern. Helga ends up falling down, and her parents end up seeing her with the Arnold mask on her head.
It was just getting ready for bed.
Oh, okay. Well, sleep well.
Yeesh. What a nut job.
I need a smoothie.
This, to me, foreshadows a lot. Helga having a crush on Arnold is just the tip of the iceberg. In this scene, the real issue implied is her parents. From this scene, it's easy enough to infer that Helga's father is a callous, brash, controlling Neanderthal, and her mother is an alcoholic who probably suffers from severe depression. Helga ends up going to therapy and is very apprehensive at first. She ends up taking control of the session and asking all the questions, which ends up being a good method of getting her to open up and talk about herself more. Dr. Bliss and Helga end up bonding over jump rope and talking more about their personal lives.
They get in fights. This is what they say. Boys are rotten, made out of cotton. Girls are sassy, made from molasses. Boys go to Jupiter to get more stupider. Girls go to college to get more knowledge.
Helga goes on to explain about how Olga is perfect in her parents' eyes and how she's usually overlooked whenever Olga is around. She opens up about how she feels like no one in her house even knows that she exists, how she had to walk to school in the snow with no jacket, and how she had nothing but a can of beans and a spoon packed for lunch because her parents were too busy ignoring her for Olga. Things press onward with the session, and Helga struggles more and more with not mentioning Arnold when Dr. Bliss brings him up directly. Dr. Bliss keeps pushing, but Helga keeps changing the subject, which allows Dr. Bliss the perfect opportunity to bring up Helga's family life again. They end up talking about how lonely it is living life feeling like no one in your house notices you. Helga tells about a time when she was late for school and her mom, who was passed out on the couch, made her lunch for school and packed her a pack of moist towelettes, a single pack of crackers, and some shaving cream. She then tells the story of how when she was really little and she was asking her dad to take her to preschool, but her dad was too preoccupied with listening to Olga play piano to take her.
Makes me proud to be a Pataki.
Hey, who's taking me to preschool?
Yeah, in a minute, Olga.
No, I'm Helga, Dad. Helga.
Whatever. Go play outside, would you?
I'm going to preschool.
What do you know? 1 minute flat.
Which led to Helga as a young child having to walk to school by herself on a stormy and rainy day. She got soaked by cars driving by and even had a big angry dog steal her lunch on the way to school. She ends up telling Dr. Bliss about how there was one person who always noticed her as a kid, and that was Arnold. He shared his umbrella with her in the rain, complimented her bow, and even offered his crackers when Harold stole hers. But as a result of her having a crush on him, everyone made fun of her, which in turn made Helga into an angry person who bullied all of the other kids. Then finally, Helga admits what she's been too scared to tell anyone. She finally tells the psychiatrist that she is in love with Arnold, which Dr. Bliss responds to by validating her feelings. She tells Helga that it's okay to be in love with him and keep it a secret as long as she isn't hurting anyone, which leads to Helga leaving her appointment seeing life in a new light. She is still mean to Arnold in an effort to hide her secret, but she is nice to Brainy for the first time and tries in the nicest way possible to tell him to stop being so weird. As a parent who loves both of my children equally, it's hard for me to watch this episode nowadays. I can't imagine ever treating my daughter the way that Bob and Miriam treat Helga. Adult or child, there's a lot you can take away from this episode. You should always be respectful of others, and if you're a parent, make sure that your child feels noticed and that they know just how much you love them. Number 1. The Journal. This episode was the final episode made for TV, so naturally, they just had to do it to you. They just had to hit you right in the heart with this one. The episode starts with Arnold on a ship with his parents, when all of a sudden the ship is attacked by pirates, and Arnold's parents go to fight the pirates. His parents end up destroying the attacking pirate ship, but are lost in the wreckage, leaving Arnold alone on his ship, begging for them to come back. Suddenly, Arnold jolts awake. He looks over to see his calendar, which is on the date October the 5th. He pulls out a picture of his parents as Grandpa Phil comes in to bring Arnold breakfast in bed. His demeanor seems to reflect that he expects Arnold to be in a bad headspace today. We next see Arnold sitting by himself on his stoop. It's a dark, gloomy, and rainy day. All of his friends walk by and invite him to go to Dinoland for half-price day, but he says he just wants to stay home today. As everyone leaves, he explains to Gerald that it's the anniversary of the day that his parents left and never came back.
It's just that I want to be by myself today, that's all.
You sure you don't want some company?
No, thanks. Go on, Gerald. Have fun at Dinoland. Ride one for me, okay?
Okay. Catch you later, Arnold.
Arnold spends the day lamenting the fact that he doesn't know if his parents will ever come back. He gets angry and decides to pack up all the stuff he has from his parents and put it away in the attic so he never has to think about them again. When putting it all away, he stumbles upon a mysterious journal in the attic that turns out to be his dad's journal. Arnold and his grandparents decide to sit down and read the journal as a family. The journal is a documentation of Arnold's dad's time in San Lorenzo in South America, beginning with the time when he met Arnold's mom, Stella. They quickly fell in love and began adventuring in San Lorenzo together. They end up in a bad situation where they were caught in the current of a river which was flowing towards a waterfall hundreds of feet in the air.
Stella!
Miles!
I love you!
As they fall down the waterfall, they're caught and rescued by a mysterious and unknown person that they could only identify as a member of the Green Eyes, an ancient civilization that is very mysterious and lives in seclusion from the rest of society. Arnold's parents, Miles and Stella, want to repay the Green Eyes for saving them, and they're told about a group of pirates that stole a precious artifact from the Green Eyes. To repay them, Miles and Stella track down the pirates and take the ancient artifact back, with intentions of returning it to the Green Eyes. Upon returning the ancient artifact to them, the Green Eyes were so grateful that they had accepted Miles and Stella as members of their family. The story continues on with the next entry in the journal being when Miles and Stella got married. On the day of their wedding, there was a massive earthquake, but they didn't let that ruin their day. Also, the Green Eyes were kind enough to give them a wedding gift, a piglet they would name Abner and decide to keep as a pet. From there, they end up going on their honeymoon in Rio de Janeiro, where they end up saving a group of people trapped in a broken cable car. They end up getting hurt themselves in the process, though. Miles specifically takes almost all of the injury in the accident. While they're still on their honeymoon, Miles' friend Eduardo comes to find them with a letter from the Green Eyes. They've been plagued with a mysterious illness that's wiping out a significant portion of their population. The only people they trust in the outside world are Miles and Stella, so they call on them to save their people. They end up jumping through some serious hoops, and they spend days on end working on a serum for the sickness plaguing the Green Eyes. Stella finally gets the serum stable and delivers it to the Green Eyes, and as Miles and Eduardo are toasting to celebrate Stella, she immediately feels ill. They take her to the emergency clinic in San Lorenzo and find out that she is pregnant and dealing with morning sickness. Many months pass, and the day finally comes that Stella goes into labor. Eduardo and Miles end up putting her on a handmade stretcher and attempting to walk her all the way to the nearest hospital. On the way, they come across a gigantic volcano that just so happens to be erupting at the exact time they're trying to get past it, and the lava flowing ends up trapping them. They come across a temple belonging to the Green Eyes, who left a small bed with a few supplies for Miles and Stella to deliver their baby. And in the middle of the jungle with a volcano erupting in the background, Arnold was born. They struggle to raise Arnold amongst the dangers of the jungle, and they decide to move back to the United States and back into the boarding house with Arnold's grandparents. We get a touching glimpse into Arnold's early childhood, living in the house with his parents and grandparents. We get to see Arnold's first birthday and Miles and Stella taking him to the park and seeing all the other kids that would end up being Arnold's friends and classmates. The last few pages of the journal are where things really start to pull on your heartstrings and open up some old familiar wounds.
I love every day of our lives together. I'm looking forward to living near my mom and dad and watching Arnold grow and learn more and more. I feel so lucky. I would do anything in the world for my lovely Stella and for our dear little son, Arnold.
The final page is a retelling of the familiar story, the day that Eduardo came and told him about the sickness that's plaguing the Green Eyes once again. This time, a lot more deadly than before. Miles and Stella feel like they owe it to the Green Eyes after how much they've done for them and how they were there for them on the day Arnold was born.
I really don't want to leave, Arnold, but our trip back to San Lorenzo will be quick. Mom and Dad can look after him. Before we know it, we'll be back playing with our boy. I know that the whole time we're there, we'll both miss our Arnold terribly.
After reading the last page of the journal with them, Arnold thanks his grandma and grandpa for everything and says he's gonna go outside and sit on the stoop. While he's out there flipping through the journal, he finds a page that they missed before, which is a map of the area where they were going to on their final trip to San Lorenzo. There's a lot to unpack in this episode. Any episode involving Arnold's parents really just hits hard in my opinion, but one of the saddest parts of the episode, to me at least, is the ending. The amount of foreshadowing the creator of the show put in here is absolutely heartbreaking. It's obvious that he wanted to continue the story in a direction that involved Arnold going to San Lorenzo, and it's sad that the series didn't get the green light to go in that direction and let him resolve the main plot line until 15 years after this episode aired. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like and leave a comment letting me know what you think, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already because it helps me a ton. I will see you in the next one. Have a good day.